Story 1. I sent $8,600 to cover my parents' kitchen remodel. A week later, my sister sent a group text. Reminder, house blessing this Saturday. Immediate family only. My mom followed with, we want without you. I just smiled, froze the funds, and removed my name from the permit. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, my dad was banging on my door, screaming, the inspector just shut us down. I opened the door slowly and said, I've never felt that kind of anger before. Not when I got scammed out of $300 by my old roommate. Not when my car got towed even though I had the damn permit on the dash. This was different. It wasn't just disrespect. It was like they spit in my face after I handed them a check. I sent $8,600 to my parents for their kitchen renovation. Not a loan. Not a partial gift. The full thing paid in one transfer. They made it sound urgent. Gas leak, rotting cabinets, some city inspection deadline they couldn't miss. My mom said if it didn't get done that week, the fines would start piling up. My dad called twice just to confirm the amount. I wired it over Monday morning and didn't hear much after that. I figured they were busy with the contractors. A few texts came from my sister midweek saying stuff like, demo day, and new counters coming in. I didn't respond. I don't usually need thanks, but I guess I expected something. Anything. Then Monday evening, exactly 7 days after the money left my account, my sister sent a message in the family group chat. Reminder, house blessing on Saturday. Immediate family only. I was halfway through rereading it when my mom followed up, we don't want you to come. That one hit like a brick to the face. No explanation, just a clean-cut message. I stared at it for a good minute, phone still in my hand, trying to figure out if I missed something. Immediate family only, and they didn't want me there. After I paid for the damn thing. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't argue. I opened my banking app and froze the funds. The payment had been set up as a scheduled release because of some contractor delay. Luckily, they hadn't completed the last verification, so I had time. Then I called the contractor and told him to pause everything. No more drywall, no painting, no appliance installs. I went to the site the next morning and handed each of the workers $50 in cash with simple instructions. Tell my parents that unless they pay in full today, you're walking off. And if my parents so much as raise their voices, call the cops. They agreed. One of them actually laughed. What my parents didn't know was that only half the money had been released to the contractor. The rest never cleared, and there was no contract between my parents and the workers, just between me and the contractor. Without my approval, the city couldn't keep the permits open. Tuesday morning, 7:12 a.m., someone started pounding on my front door, like full-on pounding. I didn't need to check who it was. I could already hear his voice from the hallway. The inspector just shut us down. I opened the door. My dad was red-faced, clutching a rolled-up piece of paper. I didn't say anything right away. Then I just said, yeah, I know. I pulled my name from the permit. They needed my authorization. I'm not authorizing anything. He looked stunned, like he couldn't even process what I was saying. I told him the rest. The money didn't go through. The contractor's guys were only working because I paid them a little bonus and told them to wait until he paid up. If he didn't, they were done. You planned a celebration for a kitchen I paid for, then told me I wasn't welcome. I'm not fixing your mistake. Pay up or deal with a half-good kitchen. Then I went back inside and left him standing there. I didn't check if he left. Didn't care. By noon that day, the group chat had turned into a slow-motion car crash. My sister tried first. 2 missed calls, then a third. I didn't pick up. 5 minutes later came the text. What the hell did you do? I didn't answer. I let it sit there unread for an hour. Then my dad jumped in with a long message about how I had complicated everything and how the inspectors are power tripping. He said I had no right to block work that didn't involve me anymore. That last part really stuck with me. Didn't involve me. My $8,600 was still sitting in a frozen state while their workers stood around doing nothing, waiting for a miracle. Their blessing party was 5 days away. No floors, no backsplash, no appliances, nothing past inspection. I knew they were spiraling. By 3 p.m., the contractor called. He said my dad showed up in person, red-faced and sweating, and handed him an envelope. Inside was the rest of the payment, $4,300 in small bills. No questions, no negotiations. He just shoved the envelope across the table and told them to finish the job. I asked if the crew got their $50 back. He laughed and said, "They handed it right to me. Said you took care of them already, so now they were going to finish by Friday." I told him, "Fine, just don't mention me again to anyone. Let them think I vanished." That night I checked the group chat. It was like nothing had ever happened. My sister was posting photos again. Fresh tiles going in, boxes with shiny new appliances stacked in the hallway. My mom sent a blurry selfie with the new pendant lights in the background, acting like it was some magical home transformation. No apology, no explanation, just back to the show. I didn't respond, but I did watch. Saturday rolled around and, as expected, not a word from anyone. No reminder, no invite. I wasn't even an afterthought. Around 2:30 p.m., my cousin Rena posted a photo on Instagram. My parents were standing in their brand new kitchen, arms around each other like a couple who just won the lottery. Plates of food were already laid out. A glass of wine was in my mom's hand. Decorations were strung across the ceiling like it was a wedding reception. The caption read, "Blessing day for Aunt Lisa and Uncle Don's beautiful remodel." What a journey. I stared at it for a while. They were all there. Cousins, aunts, even my mom's church friend who once told me I wasn't meant for family life. All of them smiling in the space I paid for. Then my sister posted her own shot. Same kitchen, same crowd. This time, the caption was different. All done without Caleb's drama this time. That's when it all locked into place. They weren't just ungrateful. They were actively rewriting the story. I didn't just miss the event. I was the problem they had to work around. I was being erased. Sunday morning at 8:41 a.m., the calls started again. My mom first, then my dad, then back-to-back from my sister. I let them all go to voicemail. Then came the texts. "Can you pick up for once? We need to talk. There's a new issue and we could really use your help." At 10:17, my mom dropped the real reason. "Something came up and we need some support. I know the kitchen thing got out of hand, but we're still family." I stared at the screen. Support. They had their blessing, their kitchen, their photos. They badmouthed me to the whole family. And now they wanted more. They wanted support. I put my phone down, walked into the kitchen, the one I paid for in my own apartment, and opened the fridge. I wasn't even angry this time. I was cold, detached. For the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to answer. By the time Sunday night rolled around, the messages shifted from desperate to manipulative. The urgency was still there, but now it was wrapped in guilt-tripping and veiled threats. My mom had left me 2 long voicemails I didn't even bother to listen to. My sister sent one of those, "I know we've had our issues, but can we just talk like adults?" Texts that sounded like it was copy-pasted from an apology template. I didn't answer any of them, but Monday morning things escalated. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a knock. Not banging this time, but persistent. I already knew. My mom was outside. When I opened the door, she looked exhausted, but not embarrassed. She went straight into a monologue, something about how they had a situation with the bank, that the funds Dad used to pay the contractor were flagged and locked, and now they couldn't cover their utilities. She kept tossing the word temporary around like it would soften the fact that they wanted more money. I didn't even ask what the issue was. I just stood there and let her talk, arms crossed, thinking about all the times she pulled the same act with a different story. New car repairs, medical emergencies, unexpected bills. Every single time I covered it without a fight. She tried to shift the blame halfway through. Said it was the contractor's fault for not giving a receipt. Said the blessing party wasn't even her idea. Said my sister was the one who wrote, "We don't want you to come." I waited until she was done, then asked one question. "Why didn't you just call me before you decided to cut me out?" She opened her mouth like she had something rehearsed. Then nothing came out. I told her flat out, "I'm not paying another dime." I said I wasn't a backup generator for when things go dark. I told her she could figure it out like I've had to figure it out my entire adult life, while she smiled and called me dramatic to my cousins behind my back. She didn't say goodbye, just turned around and left. That afternoon, I canceled the recurring payment for my sister's rent. She was getting $750 from me every month, and I doubt she even told her boyfriend about it. The landlord wasn't thrilled, but I explained the situation just enough for him to stop asking questions. Then I called my dad's dentist. They still had my card on file for those follow-up procedures he conveniently spaced out across multiple months. I told them to remove it permanently. I wasn't just pulling away. I was removing every thread they'd ever used to reach into my wallet, every lifeline, every favor. By Thursday, it was radio silence. I could feel them scrambling. They were probably trying to fix things quietly, hoping I'd come around. But I didn't. Saturday came and went. No party post this time. No group photos or half-baked captions. I imagine the kitchen looked great, but that blessing didn't feel quite as divine now that they were sitting under new pendant lights with bills stacking up and no one left to cover them. Sunday morning, I got 5 calls before 10 a.m. I didn't answer. Around noon, the text started again. This time, my mom went full passive-aggressive. I guess money is more important than family to some people. It's okay. God sees everything. You'll understand when you have kids. Then came the real push. Your father is thinking about taking out a second mortgage because we have no options. But don't worry about us. We'll manage somehow. I stared at the screen for a long time. They had pushed me out, used me up, and rewrote the story to make me the problem. And now, when I walked away, they were acting like victims. Then my sister posted something on Facebook, a picture of her coffee captioned, "Crazy how some people demand credit just for doing what decent families should do." It had likes and comments, including one from her friend. "Is this about Caleb?" She didn't reply, but she didn't deny it either. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were trying to ruin my name in the family, paint me as selfish, disloyal, the ungrateful one, the unstable one. And that's when it clicked. They thought I was done, that this was me storming off, sulking in a corner. They didn't realize this was just the start. That Sunday night, I didn't sleep. I wasn't anxious or bitter. I just kept turning over one thought in my head. They still believed they had the upper hand. They thought this was a temporary rift, that if they ignored it long enough, I'd come crawling back like I always did, bank card in hand, apology half-formed. They had no idea what was coming. First thing Monday morning, I called the city's permitting office and asked a few questions. Innocent ones. What happens if someone removes their name from a homeowner improvement permit halfway through a job? What if the job wasn't finished to code? What if a contractor was paid in cash and there was no record of it? The woman on the phone didn't know the details, but she gave me a direct line to an inspector. I called, laid out what I knew, and ended the call with one sentence. "I just want to make sure everything happening at 312 Vass Street is legal." He said he'd look into it. Then I called the IRS tip line. My dad had pulled cash out in chunks, sloppy, inconsistent withdrawals over multiple days. I knew this because one of the contractor's guys casually mentioned it to me, laughing about how he counted bills like a drug deal. My dad always thought cash was invisible. It isn't. I didn't accuse him of anything, just said I was concerned that a large cash-funded renovation was being done with no official record. That was all it took. By Wednesday, the inspector had returned to their house. Apparently, some of the wiring wasn't up to code, and the city permit was flagged for reinspection due to changes in the original approval, namely me removing my name. My dad called me 3 times and left a voicemail that sounded more like a meltdown than a message. He said the inspector had told them to either redo the electrical work with a licensed contractor or face a fine and possible order to tear out the finished portions. Then he said, "You did this." He was right. Thursday morning, I sent an email. Not to him, not to my mom, but to every relative who'd been at the kitchen blessing. I attached a PDF of the $8,600 payment confirmation, full transfer from my account with a timestamp. Then I just wrote, in case anyone was misinformed. No rant, no backstory, just the proof. The fallout started faster than I expected. By Friday afternoon, I got a message from my cousin Nate. "Dude, what is going on?" Then another from an aunt. Your mom said you didn't pay for anything. Are you saying you funded the whole kitchen? I just replied with the screenshot. They stopped asking after that. Saturday rolled in. They still held the blessing. It was quiet, smaller than before. A neighbor, my aunt, who's always been jealous of my mom's Facebook perfect life. No cousins, no church friends. My uncle skipped it entirely. And according to a message I got later, he openly asked at dinner why they lied. My mom cried in front of everyone. My dad left before they even lit the candles. But I wasn't done. I filed a simple online report with the state's contractor licensing board, flagging the unlicensed electrical work. I didn't sign my name, just uploaded the photo of the guy installing the outlets. He had posted it himself on his business Instagram and tagged the location. Then I sat back. Sunday morning, the text came in starting with my mom. Why are you doing this? Do you hate us that much? You made your point. And finally, we don't deserve this. You've hurt us. Don't expect help from us ever again. That one made me laugh. Help from them. So I responded, you never helped. You just took. And now you can figure out how to live without me. She didn't reply. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free from all of it. Part 5, The Shift. The next few weeks were quiet. Not peaceful, just tense in the way you know something's building underneath. No more calls, no texts, no social media posts. They went radio silent like they were hoping to starve me out emotionally. But this wasn't hunger. It was healing. And I wasn't waiting on an apology anymore. I was watching them come undone without me. Then out of nowhere, my sister reached out. It started with a photo, a picture of her dog lying on a bare mattress. Had to sell the bed frame. Things are tight. Hope you're okay. No context, no explanation, just an unspoken nudge. I didn't reply. 2 days later, she tried again. Can we talk? I miss how things used to be. I left that one on read. The next day, my mom sent me an email. Not a text, an actual email, like she was trying to sound more formal. She wrote a full page about how much she regretted how things happened, how she let pride get in the way, and how she never meant to push me out. She even ended it with love, Mom. Like she hadn't treated me like a stranger weeks earlier. But buried in the middle of the message, between the flowery language and vague half-blame on stress, was the real reason she was writing. They had new problems. Turns out the inspector's report triggered a reevaluation of the renovation permit, which uncovered more issues. The backsplash was installed by an unlicensed subcontractor, and the contractor himself hadn't filed the correct forms for material sourcing. Their fine was over $9,000. She said they were reaching the end of what they could handle and asked, very subtly, if I could help them explore options. That was the moment I felt it. The shift. They weren't trying to guilt me anymore. They were afraid. Afraid I'd never come back. Afraid of what else might unravel. Afraid of not having me to throw their emergencies at like fastballs. And they were right to be. I didn't answer. I sent a short text to the contractor. No more conversations about the project. Direct everything to Dawn and Lisa. I'm not involved in anything moving forward. He replied instantly, understood. My sister tried once more. A message that started off nice and then quickly turned into guilt. You're punishing us. I get that, but why cut me off too? I was just caught in the middle. I almost laughed. She wasn't in the middle. She was the one who wrote, we don't want you to come. She was the one who publicly posted that they did it without Caleb's drama. And now, without my $750 a month, she was facing something she hadn't felt in years. Responsibility. Now the calls were going to her, the bills, the stress, and she wasn't built for it. She stopped messaging after that. The part that surprised me most was how quickly the rest of the family faded away. Once the truth came out, once people realized I had funded the entire kitchen and they lied about it, no one wanted to be part of the drama anymore. My parents weren't a golden couple with the charming daughter and the selfless son. They were two people who burned the bridge they lived on. I started sleeping better. No late-night calls, no surprise bills, no emotional blackmail masked as family bonding. And every time I saw another email or text I didn't respond to, I realized something else. They weren't just losing me. They were finally alone. 2 months passed. My phone stayed silent. My inbox, too. Even my sister, who once couldn't go 3 days without sending a meme or asking for help with just a small thing, disappeared completely. I thought maybe they'd finally given up. Maybe they were adapting to life without me. Then I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my dad's coworker. He said he got my number from an old family friend and hoped it was okay to call. He started by asking how I was doing, which was odd because I'd never spoken to this guy directly in my life. Then he got to the point. He said my dad had collapsed at work the day before. High blood pressure, stress, possibly something worse. He was okay now, but things were bad at home. I thanked him for the call, said I appreciated it, then hung up. I didn't go to the hospital. Instead, I sat on my couch and thought about how many times I'd been in pain, overwhelmed, barely keeping things together, and my parents had treated me like a burden. When I was working 3 jobs and barely making rent. Silence. When I got laid off and didn't tell anyone for weeks out of pride. No one checked in. Now they were drowning in the mess they made, and I was expected to dive in and save them again, like always. The next day, my sister posted a photo of my dad from the hospital bed with a caption that read, "Some people only care when it's too late." That was the last straw. I screenshotted it. Then I posted my own photo, a screenshot of the $8,600 transfer with a short caption. I cared before it was too late. I cared before anyone else did. And this is how they treated me. I didn't tag anyone, didn't call names, just facts. The comments section exploded. Some cousins commented support. Others asked if everything was okay. A few, clearly unaware of the full story, asked what I was talking about. I let them come to their own conclusions. By the next morning, my mom finally broke her silence. She sent me one text. Was it really worth tearing the family apart? I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back, "You tore it apart the second you cashed my money and told me not to come." No reply. A week later, I found out from a mutual friend that my sister had moved out of her apartment and was back living with my parents. She couldn't afford rent anymore. The friend also mentioned my parents were selling some furniture to cover debt. The fines, the failed inspection, the second round of electrical work, it had snowballed into something they could no longer contain. For once, I felt nothing. Not pride, not regret, just stillness. They were each on their own now. My sister no longer propped up by monthly deposits. My parents no longer patched together with favors and emergency cash. And me, I was fine. My bills were paid. My home was quiet. My peace wasn't something I had to fight for anymore. They used to call me selfish for setting boundaries. Now they call it silence. But that silence is what I earned. 2 weeks passed. No calls, no texts, no surprise voicemails asking if we could just talk. My phone stayed quiet, and not the tense kind of quiet where you're bracing for the next move, just real quiet. The kind that actually felt good. I didn't hear from my mom. Not a whisper from my dad. Not even one of my sister's passive-aggressive quotes or fake check-ins. It was like they'd all collectively decided to retreat and hope that time would make me forget everything that happened. But I didn't forget. I just stopped caring. I heard from a neighbor that they sold a bunch of furniture. The dining table I ate every childhood meal at gone. My dad's favorite recliner, the one no one else was ever allowed to sit in, sold. The backyard was overgrown. Apparently, they were behind on bills, and with no extra help coming in, things started slipping. My sister had officially moved back in with them. I found out when my old roommate sent me a screenshot of her deactivating all her social media accounts. No more dog pictures, no more filtered selfies with vague captions, just gone. I'm guessing reality hit hard when she had to choose between posting brunch and actually affording groceries. And still, I didn't feel anything. Not joy, not revenge, just space. Peace. The house blessing never came up again. No follow-ups, no attempts to explain or clean things up. I guess they figured the less they said, the easier it would be to pretend like it all never happened. That's their pattern. Bury the damage and move on like it's just another family quirk. But I was done being part of the illusion. I started sleeping better, cooked more. I picked up a new project I'd been putting off for a year. I even started going out again, letting myself breathe without always checking for a missed call or an overdue request. It was the first time in years that I wasn't someone's financial plan B or emotional punching bag. It ended exactly how it needed to. No explosive arguments, no dramatic closure, just silence. The kind that sticks. The kind that says, this door isn't broken, it's locked. The conclusion's simple. People don't change when they're comfortable. My parents used me like a crutch for years, and the second I stepped away, they collapsed. Not because I wanted them to, but because they built everything on me without ever thinking I'd move. Now they know better. And me? I'm finally living without waiting for someone else's next mistake. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My sister illegally moved in with 3 kids using a spare key. So I called the cops and had them thrown out. Hello, Reddit. I am Charlotte, a 32-year-old female from Texas, and I feel like I have spent the majority of my life in the shadow of my older sister, Ella. She's 3 years older than me, and she has always been my favorite. You know, the type. Smart, outgoing, and capable of charming her way out of any situation. Meanwhile, I've been the responsible one, which appears to be code for the person who does all of the work but receives no credit. Growing up, Ella always had the best of everything. Birthdays? Hers were massive outdoor celebrations complete with bounce castles and pony rides. Mine? A pizza party in the dining room featuring a cake from the grocery store bakery. Christmas? Ella got the Barbie dream house. I purchased a used copycat with a missing elevator. My parents would simply say, "You don't need all of that fancy stuff." Or, "Be grateful for what you have, Charlotte." And I couldn't help but notice that Ella's thanks was never expected in the same manner. But the actual disparity struck me when I started college. I had worked hard in high school, juggling AP classes and extracurricular activities to maintain a high GPA. I had been accepted to a nearby institution and believed I had a strong plan. I'd commute from home to save dorm fees. Ella had attended her dream school and my parents had funded everything. I imagined they'd help me too, right? Wrong. When I mentioned my plan to live at home, my mother looked at me as if I had just suggested we relocate to Mars. "If you're staying here, you'll need to contribute," she added casually. "Ella got a full ride from us because she deserved it. You need to learn responsibility." I could not believe it. I was 18 and preparing to enter college, and they were already talking about me paying rent. Contribute turned out to be $400 per month for rent and electricity, with the additional requirement that I buy my own groceries. That may not seem like much unless you're a broke college student working part-time at a bookstore for $9 per hour. I attempted to argue. I told them how they had covered everything for Ella and how she never had to worry about money at school. Mom simply shrugged. "We gave Ella what she needed," she stated. "You're different. You're independent. You'll figure it out." So I did. I worked as many hours as I could at the bookshop, occasionally skipping meals to make ends meet. I'd pass by the campus coffee shop every morning, envious of the students who could afford lattes and pastries. Meanwhile, I was brown bagging peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and drinking free coffee from the bookshop break room. I don't believe I purchased a single textbook at full price. I acquired all of mine used or borrowed from the library. Every month, I handed over the $400 to my parents while Ella was away at her out-of-state school, living in a brand new dorm that my parents had purchased for her. She contacted me once to complain about her dorm's AC not being chilly enough, and I almost lost it. I didn't have air conditioning in my automobile since I couldn't afford to fix it. My parents continued to send Ella money every month. I once overheard Mom on the phone saying, "We don't want her to struggle. College is difficult enough." I stood in the kitchen holding my $1 ramen noodles, wondering why no one had ever shown me compassion. To make matters worse, my parents were continually praising Ella for her accomplishments. She earned a 3.2 GPA in her communications program, and they threw her a lavish graduation party complete with a catered buffet and a DJ. When I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and a computer science degree, we had a peaceful meal at home. Mom prepared lasagna and replied, "Well, we don't want to make a fuss." Looking back, I believe what hurt the most was not a lack of financial assistance. The message was clear. I didn't matter as much. While I was only present, Ella was always portrayed as the star, the one with potential. Even when I achieved it, it was overlooked. Charlotte's smart. She doesn't need help, they'd say. It seemed like being capable was a curse. After college, I moved out as quickly as possible. I rented a little apartment near my first job and began living my life on my own terms. It wasn't easy, but it felt great to be free of their expectations. I worked hard, lived frugally, and began saving. Meanwhile, Ella married Josh, whom my parents adore, despite the fact that he is constantly between jobs. They now have 3 children: Emily, 5, Mason, 4, and baby Daniel, 2. My folks are continually bailing them out. When their automobile broke down last year, my parents handed them money to get a new one. When Ella complained about how difficult it was to keep up with 3 children, Mom and Dad offered to babysit on weekends. I wish it didn't bother me anymore, but it still does. No matter how much I do on my own, it seems like I'll always be second to Ella. That is why I no longer share many details about my life with my family. I know they wouldn't mind, not really. So, I've been keeping this quiet, but I recently decided it was time to start looking for a home. I've been renting this tiny apartment for years, paying way too much for what is essentially a glorified shoebox, and I've been saving for what seems like an eternity. I eventually got to the point where I was like, you know what? I deserve this. Okay, here's the thing. I didn't tell my family, not because it's a big secret, but because they can't simply be pleased for anyone. Everything becomes a group project with them. If I addressed anything, I knew they'd start making it about Ella and her children and how whatever I get should help them. So, I decided it was easier to keep my lips shut until all was said and done. Apparently, that was overly hopeful. I'm not sure how this happened, but a woman I work with, let's call her Lisa, managed to let it slip. Lisa is one of those persons that is constantly involved in other people's lives, and I believe she casually revealed to someone that I was house searching. That person happened to be Ella's neighbor, and the word spread like wildfire. The delights of small-town Texas. A few days later, my mother contacted me. "Charlotte," she remarked, her tone excessively pleasant. "Why didn't you tell us you're looking for a house?" I should have known better, but I chose to play dumb. "Oh, I'm just browsing around right now. Nothing serious." "Well, Ella and I were talking, and we have some great ideas for you. You're going to need something big enough for everyone. You know, at least 4 bedrooms for the kids, of course." What? What children? I don't have children." She kept going as if this were the most regular thing in the world. "You'll need space for Ella's family when they visit and for us too. Oh, and it'd be great if it was close to Ella's place." I'm not sure why I was startled. She had already turned my potential house into the solution to their issues. I said something non-committal and hung up the phone as quickly as I could, thinking it was a one-time occurrence. But oh no, it wasn't. My mom and Ella began flooding me with house listings after that. I'm not exaggerating when I say it felt like a part-time job for them. Every day I'd get at least a dozen links to these crazy houses. Large homes with 4 or 5 bedrooms, pools, 3-car garages, and the works. It was as if they assumed I was looking for a reality TV mansion. Mom texted once, "Did you see that one on Maple Street? It's a huge one. Just perfect." Another time, Ella gave me a link to a 6-bedroom house with the following note: "This would be so suitable for us. We could finally have space to spread out." Us. I stared at the message for a good minute, wondering how my property purchase had become a collaborative endeavor. The worst part was that they weren't even attempting to pretend it was about me. Every place they recommended was oriented toward Ella's family. "This one has a finished basement. Josh could turn it into his man cave. The kids would love the pool in this one. Look, Charlotte. There's even a guest room for Mom and Dad when they visit." It was exhausting. At first, I attempted to gently lead them away, explaining that I was looking for something small just for myself. But that simply made matters worse. That's when I decided to cease responding. I silenced the group chat and disregarded their messages. I assumed they would finally get the point and move on. Meanwhile, I continued searching for houses on my own. I would spend my evenings reading through Zillow and my weekends looking at open houses. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, and I avoided anything slightly related to Ella's area. I didn't want to run into anyone who might tell my mother. After weeks of looking, I finally found it. A little 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It has everything I desired. A nice little porch, a sunny kitchen, and a lawn large enough for gardening. It wasn't elegant, but it felt familiar. The moment I stepped through the door, I knew it was mine. I submitted an offer, and a few nerve-wracking days later it was accepted. I can't even explain how fantastic it felt. For the first time in my life, I was doing something solely for myself with no influence from anyone. Of course, I did not inform my family. I decided to let them keep delivering their helpful suggestions while I silently moved forward. But then my mom called me out of nowhere and asked, "We're having dinner next weekend. Are you coming?" I nearly said no, but then I had a thought. You know what? Let's get this over with. So, I'm going to this dinner and I already know what it will be like. They'll probably have a full PowerPoint presentation prepared. This is the fun part. I'm about to reveal that I've already acquired a house. I am not going to sugarcoat it either. I can already hear theatrical gasps and complaints. Thank you for sticking around. I'll update you after dinner. Update 1. Hello again, Reddit. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who commented and offered advice on my previous article. I've read the majority of them, and they've been both informative and entertaining. Many of you expressed surprise at how entitled my family sounds, and believe me, I share your sentiments. Others shared their experiences with similar situations, and it's reassuring to know I'm not alone. Anyway, I promised you an update after supper, so here we go. Buckle up because this was a lot. So, I arrived at my folks' house last Saturday at precisely 6 p.m., attempting to mentally prepare for whatever garbage they were about to hurl at me. The moment I went in, there was already commotion. Ella's kids were screaming. Josh was sitting on the couch watching TV and my mother was hurrying around the kitchen. She looked over and said, "Oh, good. You're on time for once. We are off to a good start, right?" We sat down for supper and the conversation began with the normal small talk. Dad complained about gas prices. Josh vented about something at work while Ella complained about how difficult it is to manage 3 children. "Daniel keeps waking up in the middle of the night," she explained, scooping mashed potatoes onto her plate. "We're just so cramped. I feel like I'm losing my mind." I knew where this was going, but I played along by nodding compassionately while concentrating on my lasagna. My mother then cleared her throat as she does when she is about to make an announcement. "Charlotte," she added with a huge smile, "we've been talking and we think we found the perfect house for you." I almost choked on my water. Of course, they'd arrive with a plan. "Oh?" I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. "Yes," Ella chimed in. "It's a beautiful place, and it's only a few blocks from us. It has 5 bedrooms, a huge yard for the kids, and even a guest suite." Mom interrupted before I could respond. "It's perfect for everyone. There's enough space for the kids to finally have their own rooms, and Josh could even set up an office. Plus, it's in such a great neighborhood, close to good schools." I just stared at them, bewildered. They weren't even pretending it was about me anymore. "So," Ella replied, beaming as if everything was settled, "we can go see it tomorrow if you want." That's when I decided I'd had it. "Actually," I responded, setting down my fork, "I've already bought a house." The room went completely silent. Even the children stopped making noise. "What?" Mom asked, her voice harsh. "I bought a house," I reiterated. "It's a small 2-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It's perfect for me." For a little moment, I considered whether they would be pleased with me. Mom's face turned red and Ella's mouth virtually dropped to the floor. "A cottage?" Ella finally asked, her tone full of skepticism. "How are we supposed to fit in a cottage?" "You're not," I responded, "because it's my house. I bought it for myself." Mom stepped in before Ella could react. "Charlotte, how could you make such a big decision without consulting us? We've been working so hard to find the perfect place for you." "No," I replied, trying to maintain my cool. "You've been working hard to find the perfect place for Ella and her family. I didn't need your help. I knew what I wanted and I bought it. Ella's voice became quite high-pitched, as if she were about to cry. But we need this, Charlotte. Do you know how hard it is for us in that tiny apartment? Emily and Mason have to share a room, and Daniel's crib is in our bedroom. It's not fair to the kids. I took a deep breath and tried not to snap. That's not my problem, Ella. I've worked hard to get to this point, and I'm not giving up my dream house to fix your situation. That's when Dad decided to join in. He smashed his hand onto the table and yelled, "You're being selfish, Charlotte. Family is supposed to help each other. What's wrong with you?" I stood up, my heart racing. I'm not selfish. I'm finally standing up for myself. And if that makes me the bad guy in your eyes, so be it. The place erupted into turmoil. Ella was crying. Mom was ranting about how she had raised me better. Dad was complaining about how dissatisfied he was. Josh sat there stuffing food into his mouth as if nothing was occurring. I grabbed my handbag and went to the door. Mom followed me and shouted, "You can't just walk away from your family like this." I turned back to say, "Watch me." Then I got into my car and drove home, shivering with wrath and relief. I feel like I've finally spoken up, but now I'm bracing for the consequences. So that's where things are. I will let you know what happens next. Thank you for your continued support. You don't realize how much it's helped. Update 2. Hello again, Reddit. Thank you so much for all of your support and comments following my last update. I wasn't expecting such a show of support, and it's honestly helped me preserve my sanity. Many of you were correct. I should have seen this coming. After that evening, things went just as I had dreaded. So here's an update. Ella sent the first SMS that night. It was simply a photo of her children lounging on their couch surrounded by toys with the caption, "Look how cramped we are. Do you think this is fair to Emily and Mason?" I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That it was somehow my fault that her place was a mess? That buying a property for myself had somehow resulted in her children sharing a room? I turned my phone to silent and went to bed, hoping she would let it go. She did not. The next morning, I awoke to 5 missed calls from my mother and a flurry of texts from Ella. One message stated, "You always think about yourself. I thought family mattered to you." Another person stated, "Mom is so upset she couldn't even sleep last night." Finally, the piece de resistance. "You've changed, Charlotte. This isn't the sister I grew up with." Right, because the sibling she grew up with was too busy being ignored to develop a spine. I resolved to disregard it all and concentrate on my work. But the texts did not cease. Every several hours, my mother would join in with her own gems. "You're being so selfish, Charlotte. We're all disappointed in you. I hope you realize what you're doing to Ella's kids. You need to reconsider. It's not too late to sell the house and buy something better suited for the family." I silenced each of them, but they then began leaving voicemails. It was the same guilt-ridden babble, but hearing their voices made it more impactful. Mom seemed genuinely angry. Ella sounded like she was about to cry, and at one point my father called and shouted at me for 5 minutes about how I was ripping the family apart. It did not stop there. A few days later, I received a call from my aunt, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. She said, "I heard about what's going on with Ella. Can't you find it in your heart to help? Family comes first, Charlotte." I had to laugh. This was the same aunt who hardly acknowledged my existence growing up, and now she wants to lecture me on family. I told her I wasn't talking about it and hung up. Then came the Facebook posts. Ella shared a photo of her kids squished close on their bunk bed with the caption, "All they want is a little space to grow, but I guess some people think family isn't worth helping anymore." The comments were filled with sympathy from her pals who had no idea what was going on. Things like, "You're such a great mom. Whoever's letting you down doesn't deserve you." Also, "How could anyone leave you guys in that situation?" I wanted to shout. She made me out to be the villain, and I couldn't even defend myself without becoming petty. So, I kept silent and continued scrolling. But then, my mother put something on her own page. She posted a photo of my residence. I don't know how she acquired it with this caption. "It's so sad when someone forgets where they came from. Family sacrifices so much for you, and this is how they repay you." I blocked both of them right away, but not before a coworker messaged me to ask what was going on. Lisa, yes, that Lisa, appears to have read the message and was discussing it at work. Now, half of the staff assumed I had abandoned my family to live alone in a mansion. For the record, my home is only a cottage, not exactly lifestyles of the rich and famous. The stress was beginning to get to me. Every time my phone vibrated, I felt a rush of fear. I stopped using social media and ignored my email. Even when I was working, I couldn't concentrate because I was anticipating the next call or message. Ella unexpectedly showed up at my flat one evening, bringing things to a new low. I opened the door to see her standing there with Daniel on her hip and the other 2 kids in tow. She was fatigued and the children were all weeping or whining about something. "Charlotte," she exclaimed, her voice cracking. "We need to talk." I crossed my arms and stood in the doorway, preventing them from entering. "What do you want, Ella? Please," she pleaded with tears in her eyes. "We don't have anywhere else to go. The landlord's raising our rent again, and we can't afford it. Just let us stay with you for a little while. The kids need stability." I felt my heart fall, but I remained tough. "Ella, I'm sorry you're struggling, but my house isn't an option. It's not big enough, and honestly, this isn't my responsibility." She looked at me as if I just kicked her puppy. "So, that's it? You're just going to let us suffer?" "I'm not letting you suffer. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm not going to let you guilt me into giving it all up." She murmured something under her breath, then turned and stomped away, her children trailing behind. I shut the door and leaned against it, feeling both guilty and relieved. My mother called the next morning and told me I was callous for turning Ella away. She scolded me for being cold and ungrateful and warned that I might come to regret it eventually. I hung up without saying anything. Even as I write this essay, their SMS keep flashing up on my phone. Mom is sending walls of guilt-ridden paragraphs while Ella is sending images of her children. I even received a voicemail from Dad just now that began with, "I hope you're happy," and I didn't care to listen to the rest. I cannot take it any longer. The first thing I'll do tomorrow morning is change my phone number and give it exclusively to trusted friends and coworkers. It is evident that they will not stop unless I entirely cut them off. I'll deal with social media later, increasing my privacy settings and blocking anyone who might try to stir the pot. One thing at a time. I will notify you once I have completed everything. Thank you for all of your comments and support. It's truly helping me get through this situation. Update 3. Hello, Reddit. I am back with another update. So, I've been reading over your comments and wow, you guys didn't hold back. A lot of you were upset with me for not blocking my family sooner, and you were correct. After changing my phone number, I banned them from everything. Facebook, Instagram, even casual relatives who may have attempted to intervene. It was great to finally cut them off, but as expected, things quickly became chaotic again. I should have realized that the peace would not endure. It all started last weekend when my mother showed up uninvited at my place. I was in the backyard trying to figure out how to plant lavender. Google makes it look so simple, but I've already killed 3 plants when I heard a knock on the front door. At first, I assumed it was my neighbor or a delivery boy, but when I got to the door, there she was. My mother, standing on my porch with a pie in her hands and the fakest smile I'd ever seen. "Hi, Charlotte," she said, as if she had just dropped by for a casual visit and not after weeks of me disappearing. Hi," I answered, quite taken aback. I stood there for a second, contemplating whether I should even let her in, but she threw the pie at me, figuratively, and shouted, "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I brought your favorite apple." I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. My favorite is cherry, but that's good, Mom. Against my better judgment, I allowed her in. I did not want to cause a scene. She placed the pie on the counter and gazed about the home as if she were taking inventory. "This is lovely, Charlotte," she commented, sliding her hand along the back of a chair. "You've done a great job." I had no idea what to say, so I simply mumbled a brief thank you and waited for her to get to the point. She sat down at my kitchen table and sighed deeply. "I wanted to apologize," she explained. "Things got a little heated, and I realize now that we were wrong to push you like that. You've worked hard for this house, and I should have respected your decisions." I stared at her, trying to determine whether she was serious. It seemed good on the surface, but something about her tone didn't sit well with me. Then she launched into a lengthy speech about how pleased she was of me and how the stress of Ella's condition had caused everyone to behave out. "But that's no excuse," she added, giving me a sad, almost begging expression. For a little moment, I felt myself melting. Maybe she was genuinely attempting to make things right. But then she smacked me with, "I was thinking maybe we could have a fresh start. I'd love to come over again sometime. Maybe bring Ella and the kids. It'd be nice for everyone to see your new place." So there it was. I attempted to maintain my cool. "I don't think that's a good idea right now," I answered carefully, selecting my words. "Things are still a little tense, and I'm not ready for that yet." She nodded, but I could see she was not pleased with my response. "Of course I understand," she murmured, but her grin was a bit too tight, and her gaze darted around the room as if she was assessing the situation. Following a few minutes of light conversation, she stood up and remarked, "Well, I should get going. Thanks for letting me stop by. I really mean it, Charlotte. I just want us to be a family again." I nodded without saying anything. When she went, I shut the door and stood there for a long time, staring at the pie on the counter. Something about the entire encounter seemed wrong. For the previous few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the talk. Was she being real, or was this another form of manipulation? The timing seemed far too convenient. After bothering me for weeks, she abruptly apologized and offered me a pie. It also didn't sit well with me how fast she dismissed everything that had transpired. She did not mention the messages, voicemails, or the fact that I had blocked her. It was as if she was pretending none of it ever happened, which felt strange. What about bringing Ella and the kids over? That did not seem like a casual suggestion. It felt calculated, as if she was testing the waters to see how much I would let go. I haven't contacted her since, and she hasn't contacted me back either. But I can't get over the sensation that this isn't finished. Knowing my family, there's probably something else going on, and I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. What are your thoughts? Reddit? Was my mother being sincere, or is there more to this than she is letting on? Part of me wants to believe she's sincerely attempting to repair things, but another part of me thinks I'd be an idiot to trust her. Update 4. Hello, Reddit. I am back and gosh, do I have an update for you? Hopefully the final one. I wish I could say things had settled down, but everything has gone from somewhat irritating to really wild. I'm not sure where to begin, but let's just say I've officially stopped giving my family the benefit of the doubt. So, remember how my mother swung by with an apology and a pie? At the time, I told everyone I had a bad feeling about it. Turns out my instincts were correct. Something about her visit didn't sit right with me, and I couldn't figure out why. She looked way too concerned in every element of my residence, from the door locks to the room arrangement. At the time, I dismissed it as her being nosy. However, I now see it was part of a larger plan. A few days following her visit, I resumed my normal routine. Work was hectic, so I spent most of my time holed up in my new home office, focusing on deadlines. I wasn't really thinking about my family. Things had been quiet since the visit, and I wondered whether they were finally backing off. Then came Saturday. I'd gone out to run errands in the morning, the usual stuff, grocery shopping, a trip to Target, and picking up a package at the post office. I arrived home around noon, bags in hand, ready to put everything away and have a relaxing weekend. As I drove into the driveway, I noticed something odd. Ella's SUV was parked directly in front of my house. My heart sank immediately. I approached the door, fumbling with my keys, and heard voices inside. At first, I assumed I had left a window open or my TV turned on. But as I stepped into the entryway, the realization hit me like a brick. Ella, Josh, and the kids were at my house. The scene inside was complete chaos. Emily and Mason were sprawled out on my couch, surrounded by snacks and toys that were not their own. Daniel was toddling about the living room, chewing on one of my throw pillows as if it were a teething toy. Josh was in the kitchen looting my refrigerator. and Ella was in the sunroom rearranging my furnishings as if she were on HGTV. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, my voice quivering with rage and confusion. Ella looked up, unaffected. "Oh, hey, Charlotte. We figured it'd be easier to just move in while you were out." I glanced at her, trying to understand what she had just said. "Move in? Are you serious?" She rolled her eyes as if I were the one acting ridiculous. "Mom gave us the key," she said. "It'd be fine." I felt like I was about to explode. "Mom gave you what key?" "The spare key," she added, pointing to the kitchen counter where I had left it during Mom's stay. "We really needed the space, and your house is perfect for us. It could have been bigger if you'd listened to us, but it'll do, and Josh can finally have an office." "Get out," I murmured, my voice dangerously calm. "Charlotte, don't be like that," Josh interjected, leaning against my fridge with a sandwich. "You're single. You don't need all this space. This house makes way more sense for us." I couldn't believe what I heard. They were talking about my house as if it were just another handout from my parents for Ella. "Get out of my house," I repeated louder this time. Ella scoffed. "We're family, Charlotte. Stop being so dramatic. We've already started settling in, and the kids love it here. It's not like you're using all this space anyway." I didn't know how to answer. I was so enraged that I couldn't think clearly. Instead of arguing, I took out my phone and dialed 911. "Seriously, Ella?" Josh asked. "You're calling the cops on your own family?" "Watch me," I said, holding up the phone for her to see. When the dispatcher answered, I gently stated the situation. My sister and her family had broken into my home and refused to leave. Ella and Josh attempted to argue with me while I was on the phone, but I ignored them. By the time the cops arrived, I was shivering from adrenaline, but I was also determined not to let them get away with it. The cops were professional but firm. They questioned Ella and Josh on why they were in the house, and their explanation was as ludicrous as you'd imagine. "We're family," Ella stated, as if it were a solid legal argument. Josh kept saying I had plenty of space and it was the right thing to do. The officers wouldn't have it. They informed Ella and Josh that they were trespassing and that they should leave immediately. Ella burst into tears, claiming she had no idea it was such a huge issue, and Josh muttered something about me being selfish. I remained silent during the incident, letting the officers handle it. It was rather nice to see Ella and Josh pick up their belongings, including the food they had grabbed from my pantry, and shuffle out the door. After they went, one of the officers approached me and asked if I wanted to file charges. I considered it briefly, but honestly, all I wanted was for them to leave. I told the officer that I did not want to seek charges as long as they stayed away from my property. He nodded and promised to file a report if anything else happened. After they left, I locked the door and stood there for a bit, taking everything in. My house felt different suddenly, almost like it had been defiled. The thought of them just letting themselves in without asking, without caring how I felt, made my skin crawl. I've already phoned a locksmith to change all of the locks, and I'm considering adding a security system as well. I am done giving them the benefit of the doubt. This was not a misunderstanding or an act of desperation. This was entitlement, plain and simple. I'm still struggling to process the reality that my own sister believed this was okay and the fact that my mother gave them the key. I don't even have words for it yet. I called my lawyer this morning, explained the scenario, and he drafted and sent a formal cease and desist letter to my mother, Ella, and Josh. The letter explained what they had done and stated unequivocally that if they continued to harass me, I would not hesitate to seek legal action. Anyway, that's where things stand right now. I'm still outraged, but I'm also feeling numb. Part of me wonders if this is truly over or if they'll attempt anything again. Thank you again to everyone who has followed and supported me during this wild adventure. Your wisdom, validation, and sometimes tough love have meant more to me than I can express. Take care, Reddit. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My girlfriend wanted an open relationship, so I watched her drift away, found comfort in her best friend, and took control of my own happiness. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd post about relationships, but I need to vent and maybe get some help. At 28 male, I thought my relationship with Sophie, 27 female, was secure until recently. After 3 years dating and 2 years living together, everything was great. Like, I was covertly checking for engagement diamonds on my lunch break. Super normal story. Common friends introduced us at a board game night. She smiled at my stupid jokes. I enjoyed her Monopoly competitiveness, and we clicked. After dating for a year, it was natural to share an apartment as we were always at each other's houses. Our routines, Sunday morning pancakes, park walks after work, watching her favorite dreadful reality shows while I play phone games, normal couple stuff. Sophie is a marketer. I handle building projects. Our families get along. We have wonderful careers and friends. My mom adores her. Her dad regularly invites me to football games. We were that couple that gave others hope in relationships. Yeah, it sounds familiar now. Everything was normal until Tuesday dinner was served. Sophie was talking about a work project while I was eating my sandwich when she said, "Hey, what would you think about trying an open relationship?" I froze mid-bite, fork halfway to mouth. I assumed I misheard her, but she kept talking. She told me she had been reading about it online, that many couples were trying it, and that it may help us grow and strengthen our relationship. I asked, "Is there someone specific you want to date?" Because that was my initial instinct. Open relationships are only discussed when someone has someone in mind, right? Sophie became defensive. No, it's not about anyone else. I just think it would be good for us to explore ourselves more. We're still young, and I don't want us to wake up in 10 years wondering what we missed out on. Sitting there, I tried to understand what was happening. When a waitress smiled too much at me, this girl became upset. Now her new dating advice is like proposing we try a different restaurant. I asked, "Have you been feeling unhappy?" In case I missed something. Maybe I should have noticed indications. "Not at all," she answered, taking my hand across the table. "I love you. I love us. This isn't about being unhappy. It's about making our relationship even better. Think about it. We could both have new experiences but still come home to each other. Lots of couples say it makes their connection stronger." Not knowing what to say, my thinking froze between confusion and panic. My appetite was gone. The food in front of me could have been cardboard. Sophie, however, spoke animatedly, almost glowing. She kept talking about norms, boundaries, and communication, but I kept thinking, where is this coming from? However, yes, I said okay. I realized this sounds weak. Not because I wanted to, not because I believed, but her desire in her eyes and the way she leaned in, virtually screaming for my approval, showed she had already decided. Saying no was like closing a door she didn't want to. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" she questioned, wide-eyed and anxious, like she was offering me a choice. "We don't have to if you're not comfortable." I saw her desperate for my approval. I knew this wasn't a decision. In the back of my head, something was changing between us, like it or not. To find out what was going on, I had to play along. "No, it's fine," I nodded. "If you think it'll be good for us, we can try it." I entered something I didn't believe in, knowing I was losing her. She became thrilled and started talking about how we might set up dating app profiles together and how we should notify each other of upcoming dates. All of which she seemed to have already considered. I'm sitting there wondering, how long did she plan this? The rest of the night was odd. We watched TV as usual, but my mind raced. Sophie was cuddling with me on the couch, acting like everything was fine, like she hadn't just suggested changing our relationship. I kept wanting to return it and tell her I wasn't happy. I had no idea how. Every time I saw her browsing through her phone with a smile, I felt like I had made a big mistake. That night in bed, I couldn't sleep. Sophie lay cold next to me, serene, while I glanced at the ceiling wondering what I had done. Part of me wanted to wake her and tell her I didn't want to share her. Some part of me was afraid. I was afraid she would do it or leave me if I said no. As I laid there, I reviewed our recent conversations to see if I missed any indication. Is she bored? Was I insufficient? Was someone else there? I had no responses to the inquiries that kept coming. Little did I know, this was just the start of the chaos. Sophie asked me to assist pick photographs for her Tinder and Bumble profiles all evening. Like a lover would, she asked me to take new photos of her. Yes, seriously. I took images of my girlfriend to make her look good to other males. I created my own profile to demonstrate my effort. My heart wasn't in it. Writing a bio felt awkward and false every time. What should I write? Looking for fun while dating? I felt awful all over. She probably knew I wouldn't meet anyone. I told her, I'm not social and don't have time or energy to meet new people several times. Maybe she believed she could date and use me as backup. Sophie got matches fast. Her beauty and playfulness are obvious. I was most surprised by how quickly she met these guys. Within a week, she had 3 dates. 3. She showed me their profiles like we were discussing celebrity obsessions. She shoved her phone in my face. Look at this one. He's a personal trainer at that fancy gym downtown. We're getting coffee tomorrow. I nodded, pretending this was usual. I felt queasy. The first time she got dressed for a date, I had never seen her black clothing before. For this, she bought new outfits. She did cosmetics for an hour. She twirled as she left our bedroom. How do I look? She exclaimed. I said, great. Knowing that dress probably cost more than she spends on our date nights. She returned home late that night, laughing. I feigned sleep when she went to bed, but I heard her texting for an hour. She hummed while preparing coffee the next morning and pretended everything was wonderful. I noticed her schedule. Monday involved coffee with the gym guy, Wednesday supper with a lawyer, a food truck owner, and I had drinks Friday. The range was intriguing. She always came home looking like she had the time of her life. I checked the Instagram locations she tagged. Not my proudest moment, but I needed to know the truth. I drove by the restaurant where she stated she was eating one night. She was at the bar with a tall, suit-clad man, cracking up. She held his arm and looked at him like she did at me. The distance between us was growing. Her change at home was worse than seeing her with these guys. She spent less time with me, no more cuddling. She texted constantly. Our Sunday pancake ritual? She was meeting the girls for brunch. I once discussed it with her. Don't you think you're going on a lot of dates? I asked casually. She looked at me like a fool. That's the whole point of an open relationship, isn't it? To meet new people and have experiences. You should try it too. I can help you with your profile if you want. But I didn't want profile aid. Please return my girlfriend. I wanted the person who used to love ordering pizza and watching lousy movies with me, not this new version who always dressed up and left. She was getting ready for date number 6 or 7 one night. I lost track. I couldn't stand it. I went on a walk to clear my brain and ended up at this picnic spot. I sat there for 2 hours contemplating how quickly everything had fallen apart. Sophie's messages buzzed my phone. Hope you're okay. Don't wait. Have such a great time. She twisted the knife with each message. She tried to tell me about her date the next day, how hilarious he was and how he took her to this great new restaurant. Standing, I left the room. Following me, she seemed bewildered. I thought you were okay with this, she asked, shocked. Yeah, maybe I'm not, I answered. But you could be dating, too. You're choosing to stay home and be miserable. That's when I understood she didn't understand. She didn't get that I didn't want additional dates. I wanted her old self. He liked our boring, normal existence together. 3 weeks had passed since she started this open relationship thing. 3 weeks of watching her dress up for other guys and lying awake wondering where she was, what she was doing, and who she was with. My thoughts went crazy. For 3 weeks, I assumed she'd understand how foolish she sounded. I kept waiting for her to wake up and realize how ridiculous this was and what she was throwing away. But she didn't. Without hesitation, not guilty, she took pride in it. She moved around like she had discovered a higher level of dating that we were too foolish to understand. The worst part? I couldn't comprehend why. It seemed she liked me. Why burn it all down? Why say we didn't have enough? It finally clicked. This was unfixable. No return. The end was irreversible. For once, I wasn't sure I cared. I was inspired by the thought of her living her life carefree while I was drowning in it. I wanted her to regret everything. Show her what she threw away. I had no plan yet, but I knew I wouldn't suffer while she had fun. I didn't know what to do next, but I needed to chat with someone who would realize how messed up this was. Emma started visiting more often. Emma, Sophie's best friend since college freshman year, was Emma. She came to movie nights, helped us move furniture, and brought soup when someone was sick. One of those genuine people, you know? Being a kindergarten teacher suits her because she makes everyone feel heard and important. I always saw her as Sophie's friend, though. Pretty, long brown hair, green eyes, constantly smiling. I put her in the buddy zone. In addition, she had dated Mark for 2 years. However, they split months ago. She first came over after Sophie started her open relationship to borrow mixing bowls for a birthday cake. Sophie went out with a new guy and Emma sensed something was up with me. "You look terrible," she stated directly. "What's going on?" Although I didn't intend to tell her everything, it happened. How Sophie announced open relationships to me, how she dated various males practically every night. I felt crazy witnessing it all. Emma sat listening, truly listening, not just waiting for her turn to speak. She shook her head after I finished. "That's not an open relationship," she remarked. "That's just Sophie doing whatever she wants without caring how it affects you." Something about hearing it from someone else made me feel less insane. After that, Emma visited more often, generally while Sophie was dating. Watching movies, ordering takeout, just hanging around. Talking to someone was nice, someone who understood us in the situation. Confession. Emma appeared concerned one night after Sophie had been exploring for a month. I saw her fiddle with her jewelry when she was concerned. "I need to tell you something," she whispered from across the couch. "And it might make things weird, but I can't keep pretending." My stomach flipped strangely. Maybe I knew what was coming. "I've had feelings for you for a long time," she replied, holding her hands. "Like, since before you and Sophie even got together. But you were with her, and she's my best friend, so I never said anything. I started dating Mark hoping it would help me get over it. But," she replied, "it didn't work." I sat there trying to comprehend. Emma. Kind, funny, lovely, had affections for me? How could I miss that? She assisted me in Sophie's gift selection. Sophie, who was undecided about a meaningful relationship with me. Sophie seldom texted to check in, but Emma made me homemade chicken soup when I was unwell. Was I blind the whole time? "You don't have to say anything," she said hurriedly. "I just needed you to know. Watching Sophie treat you like this, seeing how much it's hurting you, it's been killing me. You deserve better than this." I regarded her, really regarded her. Her eyes shone in that modest green sweater. Her hair was in an easy, sloppy bun that made her seem prettier. I was puzzled how I hadn't noticed before. Still, Sophie's actions haunted me. She believed I'd wait like a devoted idiot while she walked around with multiple guys. Like I was a safety net available whenever she was bored. It was her biggest error. She was out there doing what she wanted, assuming I'd be there when she returned. Nah. For me, that chapter ended. I no longer followed her rules. My game was personal. I shot my shot. I breathed deeply, feeling that shift, the moment when I took charge. "Emma," I said, surprised by my steady voice. She sat closer on the couch. "I know this is complicated. I know I'm probably making everything worse by telling you this. But seeing you so unhappy these past few weeks, I just couldn't stay quiet anymore." She kissed me, leaning in, kissing me. I should have stopped. I should have considered Sophie, our friendship, and how complicated this would be. So I kissed her back. Not simply a kiss, we slept together. This was different. Emma noticed me. She liked me. She noticed my countenance shift, inquired what I was thinking, and cared. After resting in the dark, I processed it. This had gone far. How everything changed knowing I slept with my girlfriend's best friend. It should have felt like crossing a line, but all I could think about was how good that felt. This was no meaningless rebound, no impetuous mistake. She turned, raising herself on her elbow, looking at me. "What are we going to do?" she inquired quietly but steadily. Staring at the ceiling, I sighed. I should have replied. I should have felt guilt, conflict, etc. I only felt relief. After weeks of choking in Sophie's wreckage, I could breathe. "I don't know," I said. Emma paused, then asked, "I don't regret it. Do you? That insane thing, I didn't. Not even briefly. I saw things clearly for the first time since this open relationship tragedy began. Our demise wasn't my fault. I did not break trust. Maybe I deserve someone who wants me. Just me. Sophie's going to lose it when she finds out, I remarked. Probably, Emma said. But isn't it funny how she thinks it's perfectly fine for her to date other people? But the idea of you doing the same would drive her crazy? It was her point. And then I thought, maybe Sophie should take her medicine. I didn't tell Sophie about Emma immediately. Part of me wanted to watch her reaction to hints first. Maybe that was petty. After seeing her show off with different guys for weeks, I thought she deserved to experience that. After Emma left, Sophie returned from staying at Jessica's place. Jessica was probably Jason, but whatever. She chatted about her girlfriend's night while pouring coffee. The first hint was dropped then. Oh, Emma stopped by last night, I casually said. We had a really good talk. Sophie's coffee pot grasp froze. Emma was here? Yeah, we hung out for a while. She's really easy to talk to, you know? Sophie dropped her coffee mug too hard, spilling some on the counter. What did you guys talk about? Just stuff, I shrugged. Life, relationships, feelings. It was nice. Her expression was priceless. Her next hour was spent contacting someone, likely trying to gain specifics from Emma, while pretending to watch TV with me. She looked at me every few minutes trying to figure out what occurred. Over the next 3 days, I mentioned Emma more. She was hilarious. Her genuine understanding. How we texted. Sophie would always have a tight look, like she was trying not to respond but couldn't. Sophie almost ran across the couch when I smiled at my phone while emailing Emma one morning. Who are you texting? She inquired, failing spectacularly at casualness. Just Emma, I said. She's really into this new show I recommended. Sophie tried to grin but seemed in anguish. You guys have been talking a lot lately. Yeah, she's great to talk to. Really gets me, you know? Sophie started checking my phone when I left it sitting around. She thought she was sneaking, but I caught her browsing through my texts when I was in the bathroom or kitchen. The amusing part? I removed all Emma-related evidence. I left enough pleasant texts to make her suspicious and insane. Sophie began appearing at my known locations. I would mention getting coffee at this cafe near work, and she would simply show up. Or she would arrive an hour after I said I was meeting friends at a bar, saying she was in the neighborhood. Best part? Self-date cancellations began. She suddenly came home more. I want to watch movies. Cook dinner together. It was like witnessing someone mark their territory without acknowledging it. She came straight out with it after many attempts to get closer, which I always blocked. Are you seeing someone else? Isn't that kind of the point of an open relationship? I asked. To see other people? Yeah. But who is it? Is it Emma? Are you sleeping with Emma? I only answered, I thought we weren't supposed to share details about our other partners. Isn't that what you said when I asked about your dates? Sophie faltered. She looked at my Instagram followers, likes, and online interactions. She obsessively read Emma's social media posts and stories. Emma's coffee shop selfie was the final blow. A coffee establishment where I have my morning coffee. Sophie rang me immediately. Are you with Emma right now? Sophie, I'm at work. But you always get coffee at that place in the morning. Did you meet her there? I let her panic, then said, that coffee shop has like 1,000 customers every day. People can go to the same coffee shop without it meaning anything. Sophie wasn't convinced. She often asked where I was heading, the person I saw, what I did. She demanded to know my every move after weeks of arriving home late from dates and never telling me who she was with. Emma laughed at Sophie's behavior when I told her. We met discreetly at her house so Sophie wouldn't see us. I quickly lost my doubts about hooking up with her and felt justified. She really can't handle not being in control, can she? Emma asked one night while we sat on her couch. Okay, nope, I said. And the best part? She can't even complain about it without admitting she never actually wanted an open relationship. She just wanted permission to cheat. Sophie switched tactics one night at home. She dropped a bomb that changed everything. A closed relationship proposal. I think we should close the relationship again. I saw Sophie sit on our couch appearing serious and anxious, telling me we should focus on us again. The same person who had been dating randomly for weeks was now sitting there acting like she was helping me. I think we've explored enough, she murmured, taking my hand. Pulling it away, I said, we could go back to how things were before? Just you and me. It made me laugh. Just you and me. Like the past few weeks never happened? Well, yeah, she answered, confused by my response. Isn't that what you wanted? You haven't seemed happy with the open relationship. I quit playing games then. You're right. I haven't been happy watching my girlfriend go on dates with a new guy every other night while barely acknowledging my existence. Her face did this odd thing because she wanted to look empathetic but failed. I know it was hard for you, but that's why I'm saying we should close things up again. We can work on ourselves, work on us. Work on us, I repeated. Like how you've been working on getting to know half the guys in the city? That's not fair, she defended. You agreed to the open relationship. You could have been dating, too. Oh, I have been, I responded, observing her look. I've been seeing someone. Sophie paled. Really pale. What? Who? Does it matter? Isn't that what you wanted? Both of us exploring and having new experiences. She leapt from the couch. Of course it matters. Who the hell is it? How long? Her eyes expanded. It's Emma, isn't it? I sat and let her spy. She ran her hands through her hair and paced our living room. It is Emma, isn't it? That's why you've been talking about her so much. That's why she's been avoiding my calls. My best friend. Leaning back, I said, really funny how you're allowed to sleep with whoever you want. But the moment I do the same, it's a problem. But it's Emma, she cried. She's my best friend. You can't sleep with my best friend. Standing, I looked her in the eye. Actually, I can. And I did. Sophie rose. She looked at me like she couldn't believe what she heard. What did you just say? I slept with Emma. Multiple times, actually. And you know what? It was great. She actually cares about my feelings, which is more than I can say for you lately. Sophie's face turned from disbelief to wrath in 2 seconds. You're lying. Emma would never do that to me. Really? Because she did. Want to know what else? She's had feelings for me for years. Even when she was dating Mark, she was thinking about me. You're lying to hurt me, Sophie remarked. I saw doubt in her eyes. I'm not. I witnessed realization. Remember last Thursday when you were out with that startup guy? Sophie nodded slowly. Emma came over. We talked for hours. Then we slept together. She sees me as a person, not just some backup plan waiting at home while you live your best life. Sophie took out her phone, likely to call Emma, not believing me. Emma would never. Check your texts with her, I encouraged. Notice her recent distance? Unresponsive to your messages? For that reason. She looked through her phone anxiously, possibly seeing Emma's ignored messages and short replies in a new light. This can't be happening, she said. This isn't how this was supposed to go. Really? How should it go? You party with other guys while I stay home as the loyal boyfriend? Was it impossible that I would find someone else? Not Emma? No. Emma! She shouted. You knew it would hurt. I lost it then. Do you hurt? How much have you wounded me? Did you ever consider how it felt to watch you dress up for other guys? Come home late smelling like someone else's fragrance? And barely look at me? She protested. That was different. Those guys didn't mean anything. Did that improve it? While you had meaningless hookups, I developed serious affections for someone. I wanted to drop hints to make her feel the heat she gave me. Staring at me, she paused. Real feelings. Yeah, true sentiments. Emma and I go beyond physical. We chat, we chuckle, really care about each other. When was the last time we talked about something other than dating or new experiences? Sophie slumped, defeated on the couch. What are you saying? You want to be with Emma? This open relationship situation revealed my true desires. This person doesn't ignore me. Then she cried. Big, dramatic sobs. It would have worked on me a month ago, but all I could think about was how she hadn't cried over how much she'd wounded me. She sobbed, "We can fix this. We can go back to how things were." Shaking my head, I said, "We can't, because now I know what it's like to be valued. I won't settle for less." Sophie did something unexpected then. She stormed out with her keys. "I'm going to Emma's place to sort this out once and for all." Sophie slammed the door, so I grabbed my phone to tell Emma. I told her Sophie was coming, and she said, "Let her come. Emma's always been serene. Nothing shakes her." I offered support by coming over. "No," Emma responded. "I must handle this. 10 years is my best friend. I owe her a lot." I spent the next hour pacing around our apartment, checking my phone every 2 minutes. It felt uncomfortable, like when a storm is coming and the air gets thick. Emma called finally, shakily. "She came screaming," Emma said. "My neighbors undoubtedly heard everything. She kept screaming about how I betrayed her, was a bad friend, and planned this." "You said what?" He told her the truth, that I had feelings for you for years but never acted on them since she was my friend. Watching her treat you like garbage these last weeks made me realize she never deserved us. Our relationship wasn't intended, but I don't regret it. Sophie didn't like that. She tried to force her way into my apartment, stating she needed to see whether you were there. She accused me of hiding you when I blocked the door. "She's completely lost it," Emma added. She listed all the random occasions we hung out to illustrate we'd been sneaking around for months. She even mentioned your couch-moving help last year, like when she was too busy working to help. Sophie seemed to think any encounter with Emma and me was evidence of an affair. Emma brought me soup when I had the flu, a cover for hooking up. Our group movie nights, just an opportunity to get close. She began crying, Emma said, like, sliding down my doorframe crying, claiming she never intended this. My neighbor checked on me. It was humiliating. After Mrs. Chun threatened to call the police over the disturbance, Sophie left. She told Emma she'd ruined everything and would never forgive her. Sophie returned to our house 20 minutes after my call with Emma. She looked awful. She entered and saw me sending Emma updates on my phone and lost it. "Are you texting her now? Planning your next gathering? Since when have you two laughed at me behind my back?" "Sophie, no one's laughing at you. You harmed yourself. I did nothing. I suggested an open relationship to strengthen us," she cried, tossing her pocketbook across the room. "I never told you to sleep with my best buddy." "No," I said. "You just wanted permission to sleep with whoever you wanted while keeping me as your backup plan." She grabbed our photos and gifts and put them in a box. "I'm staying with Jessica, my true pal, someone who wouldn't backstab me." "Fine by me," I added. "Take whatever you want." That paused her. "Just that? Not even try to stop me? Would I? You've stated that you value something other than me or our relationship." She stopped packing and sat on the couch, visibly shrinking. "I believed you would always be there. That no matter who I dated, you'd be there when I settled down." The truth ultimately emerged. She experimented without me, but I was her backup plan and promised happy ending. "Well, you guessed wrong," I informed her. "I'm not a puppy waiting by the door while you have fun. I have emotions. I deserve more than second place." "But you weren't my second pick. I adore you." "No, Sophie. You adore having me around when convenient. Differences exist." Her wailing resumed, but I didn't feel anything. Not wanting to soothe her, not guilty, nothing. Emptiness. "I'll get the rest of my stuff tomorrow," she said, taking up her box. "I can't be here right now." After she departed, I called Emma. Just hearing her voice calmed me. That night, we chatted about Sophie, ourselves, and the future for hours. Some of their mutual friends were already taking sides, with most dubbing Emma a backstabber without knowing the full tale. "I don't care," she said. "Think what you want. I know the reality." In my half-empty apartment, I noticed Sophie's stuff were gone. I was relieved, like I could breathe again. I urged Emma, "Come over. Settle with me." "Yes," she agreed. I was done caring. The next morning, Sophie picked up her items. She brought Jessica and 2 other unfamiliar pals. Sophie had told them her story, so they looked at me like I was the bad person while helping her pack. "I bought your Xbox for your birthday," she remarked, unplugging it. "Fine, take it." I didn't care anymore. Emma arrived halfway through packing, after reading between the lines when I texted her about coffee. Sophie's pals whispered when Emma entered, but Emma ignored them and offered me my coffee. "Really? You'll show me this?" Sophie snapped. Emma remarked, "Nobody's flaunting anything. I'm just here to support my boyfriend." Neither of us had used the word before. Sophie appeared slapped. Packing got faster after that. Sophie's companions rushed around gathering belongings, likely to get her out before another meltdown. After finishing, Sophie stood in the doorway. "I really loved you," she whispered. "No," I said. "You liked having me on call. Differences exist." Emma helped tidy up after they departed. "You okay?" she questioned, watching me put Sophie's stuff in a donation box. "Yeah. First time in months I am." 2 weeks later. Life has changed since then. Better. Emma and I are doing things right, but slowly. We had coffee at Sophie's favorite restaurant last weekend and saw other pals ignored us completely. Emma smiled and squeezed my hand. Sophie continues to tell everyone how I cheated. Emma betrayed her, and we always desired each other. Some believe her, important people don't. Emma brought over her kindergartner artwork to decorate my fridge yesterday. "Too empty," she said. "I noticed something in those crayon drawings. This is my wish. Someone who notices details, who cares about warming my place, who brings coffee because I didn't answer her text." Instead, I graded Emma's class papers while we watched her new favorite mystery show. Simple, normal, real. Looking back, Sophie's open relationship suggestion was almost helpful. Not because that was a good idea, but because it revealed my ideal companion. Someone picks me first, not just when convenient. The thing about life, the worst choices can lead to the best locations. For me, to the proper person. She was always there. Edit. Thanks Reddit for your support. Emma is reading this over my shoulder, chuckling at my description of her. She's constantly happy, by the way. She says hello. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name is Daniel. I'm 29 years old, and for the past year, I've been living alone in a small townhouse I bought after saving for years. It's not fancy, but it's mine, and I've worked hard to carve out a life that feels stable after years of family chaos. The funny thing is, I thought buying a place of my own would finally give me peace. What I didn't count on was my sister Emily deciding that my independence meant I was now her built-in safety net, or as she likes to call it, the fun uncle who doesn't mind helping out. Except it hasn't felt like helping. It's felt like being taken advantage of. Emily is 2 years older than me, 31, and has 2 kids. 6-year-old twins who are, to put it mildly, a handful. They're good kids at heart, but they have boundless energy, zero bedtime discipline, and a habit of breaking anything they get their hands on. I love them, but I also know my limits. The problem is, Emily doesn't. Ever since her breakup with her long-term boyfriend, she's been pawning the kids off on me at every opportunity. At first, I thought I was just stepping in to help during a rough patch. She was adjusting to being a single mom, and I figured, what kind of brother would I be if I didn't offer a hand? But what started as the occasional weekend soon turned into every weekend, and then every Friday through Sunday, and then, unbelievably, sometimes even weekdays when she had plans. Came to a head on a chilly Saturday morning about a month ago. I had just settled into my couch, coffee in hand, looking forward to a day of quiet when my doorbell rang. I already had a sinking feeling as I walked to the door. Sure enough, there stood Emily, hair done up like she was ready for a night out, her kids fidgeting beside her. She didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Hey, thanks again, Danny," she chirped, already turning to leave. I blinked at her, still groggy. "Wait, what? I didn't agree to this." She waved her hand like I was being silly. "Come on, you love spending time with them. I'll pick them up tomorrow evening." And then she was gone, heels clacking down my walkway before I could even get another word out. That was the 4th weekend in a row. The twins ran inside, dumping their backpacks in the hallway, and I just stood there stunned. I felt this heavy knot in my chest. resentment mixing with guilt. I love those kids, but I hated being cornered. I hated how Emily made me feel like I didn't have a choice, like my time wasn't my own. I told myself I'd talk to her about it when she came back to pick them up, but by the time Sunday rolled around, she was too busy to chat. She scooped up the twins, blew me a kiss, and sped off. The fifth weekend was worse. It wasn't just that she dropped them off again. It was the way she did it. No knock, no explanation. I heard the commotion at my door and opened it just in time to see her car pulling out of my driveway. Her kids standing on my porch like two little abandoned packages. I stood there speechless, watching her tail lights disappear. That's when I snapped. Not in front of the kids, of course, but inside something broke. I realized Emily didn't see me as her brother. She saw me as free childcare. And when I finally called her later that night to tell her enough was enough, that I wasn't their built-in babysitter, she didn't even try to hide her fury. "Are you kidding me, Daniel?" she screamed through the phone. "You have no idea how hard it is being a single mom. You sit there in your nice little house with no responsibilities, no kids, no partner. Your life is easy. The least you could do is help your own family." I tried to stay calm, but my voice shook when I told her I wouldn't keep doing this. "I'm not saying I'll never help," I said, "but I can't keep giving up every single weekend. I need my own life too." The line went silent for a beat, and I thought maybe she was calming down. Then she hissed, "Fine. If you won't step up, maybe Mom and Dad should know what kind of selfish son they raised." An hour later, my parents were calling me, demanding to know why I was abandoning my sister in her time of need. I tried to explain, but my mom cut me off with, "You're single, Daniel. You don't have real responsibilities. Of course you should help." The anger in my chest burned hotter. My whole life, Emily had been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was always the one expected to bend, to adjust, to give up my time and energy because you don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand. I thought I could shrug it off, but then came the part that made my blood run cold. Just when I thought the storm had passed, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, two uniformed police officers were standing on my porch. "Are you Daniel Carter?" one of them asked. My heart plummeted. "Yes," I managed to say, my voice tight. The taller officer nodded gravely. "We've received a call about a potential abandonment situation. Do you mind if we step inside?" And that's when I realized my sister had crossed a line I didn't think even she was capable of. The moment those words left the officer's mouth, my stomach turned into stone. "Abandonment situation?" I repeated, my voice cracking slightly. Behind me, the twins were in the living room loudly arguing over who got to use the tablet first. Their laughter and shrieks echoed through the house, completely at odds with the seriousness of what was happening at my front door. The officer stepped inside and I instinctively moved back, still in shock. The taller one introduced himself as Officer Miller, while the other, a younger officer named Reed, glanced around the room, taking in the toys scattered across the floor. Miller's expression softened when he saw the kids, clearly healthy and safe, but his tone was professional. "We got a call from a relative expressing concern that the children may have been left unattended or neglected." I felt heat rising in my face. "What? That's insane. They're my niece and nephew. My sister dropped them off this morning without even asking me. Like she always does. They've been with me all day. I've been taking care of them." I gestured toward the living room where the twins were now racing toy cars across the coffee table. Reed raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Miller gave a polite nod, jotting something down in his notepad. "Do you mind if we ask the kids a couple of questions?" Miller asked. My instinct was to protest. I didn't want them dragged into this mess, but I also didn't want to look defensive, so I sighed and said, "Sure, go ahead." The officers crouched down to the kids' level and asked simple things. What their names were, how long they'd been at Uncle Daniel's, if they had eaten, if they felt safe. The twins answered cheerfully, completely oblivious to the tension. "Uncle Danny gave us pancakes and we watched cartoons," one of them said proudly. Miller nodded, satisfied. He stood and faced me again. "Looks like they're well taken care of. I think this was a misunderstanding." But I knew it wasn't a misunderstanding. Emily had weaponized the police against me. After the officers left, assuring me that no further action would be taken, I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I called Emily. She picked up on the second ring, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "Oh, the cops came? Well, good. Maybe now you'll take your role more seriously." "My role?" I snapped. "Emily, I'm your brother, not your babysitter. You can't just dump your kids on me whenever you feel like it, and then call the police on me when I draw a boundary." She laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Boundaries? You don't get to have boundaries, Daniel. You don't have a family of your own, so you don't know what sacrifice is. You owe me this. You owe Mom and Dad for everything they did for us." That word, "oh," stuck in my brain like a splinter. The next weekend, I thought maybe she'd give me space. Maybe after the police fiasco, she'd back off. But no. Friday evening, she pulled into my driveway with the twins. She didn't even bother to knock, just honked until I came outside. When I didn't immediately open the door, she marched up and started banging on it like she owned the place. I opened the door a crack and told her flat out, "I'm not doing this anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't get to say no." She shoved the twins' backpacks at me. "You're taking them. I have plans." I didn't move to take the bags. The twins, sensing the tension, shuffled awkwardly behind her. "Emily, listen to me carefully," I said, my voice low but firm. "I am not responsible for your choices. If you have plans, you need to make arrangements." "Not me," she exploded. "Do you know how selfish you sound? You've always been like this, lazy, unhelpful, hiding in your little world while I carry the real weight. Mom and Dad agree with me. They told me you're being ridiculous." And she wasn't lying. That same night, Mom called, her voice sharp with disappointment. "Daniel, why are you making things so difficult? Your sister needs you. Those children need you. Why can't you just step up?" I tried explaining again how often Emily was using me, how it wasn't just once in a while, it was constant. But Mom cut me off. "You don't understand because you've never had to sacrifice for anyone. You've always been the one we had to push. Your sister has always been stronger, more responsible. This is your chance to finally prove you're part of this family." Her words landed like punches. Stronger, more responsible. That was always Emily, according to them. I was the one who needed to prove myself no matter how much I achieved. Never mind that I was the first to graduate college, the one who bought my own home without a cent from them. None of it mattered. The favoritism wasn't new, but this time it burned deeper. It wasn't just about words. They were actively undermining me, siding with Emily as she trampled over my life. The following week, I started getting texts from my dad, too, echoing the same message. "It's family, Daniel. You don't turn your back on family." When I didn't respond, he sent another, "Don't make us regret raising you." Felt like I was drowning. Every time I stood up for myself, the weight of their disapproval pulled me under. And Emily knew it. She started using that favoritism as a weapon. When I refused to watch the twins one night, she showed up at my house anyway, parked the car in my driveway, and shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Guess Uncle Daniel doesn't care if his niece and nephew starve." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to shut the world out. But more than anything, I felt the first flicker of something else. Something sharp, cold, and focused. I was done being their doormat. And that was the moment when the idea of turning the tables on all of them first began to form in my mind. The breaking point came 2 weeks later on what was supposed to be an ordinary Thursday. I had just come home from work, exhausted, looking forward to reheating leftovers and zoning out on the couch. The house was quiet, just how I liked it. But as I walked up to my front door, I froze. There, sitting on my porch, were the twins. Alone. Their little backpacks were propped against the wall, and a grocery bag sat beside them with what looked like pajamas stuffed inside. My stomach dropped. They waved at me cheerfully like this was completely normal. "Hi, Uncle Danny," one of them chirped. "Mom said we're having a sleepover." I was stunned. "Where's your mom?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. They shrugged, pointing vaguely down the street. She said she had to run errands. She told us to wait here because you'd be home soon. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door and ushered them inside. The idea that Emily had left her 6-year-olds sitting unattended on my porch for who knows how long made me feel sick. Anything could have happened. I called her immediately, my voice trembling with fury. She picked up after several rings, sounding breathless, like she'd just parked her car somewhere crowded. "Relax, they're fine," she said dismissively. "You're overreacting. They were safe on your porch. It's not like you live in a bad neighborhood. Are you out of your mind?" I yelled. "They're 6 years old, Emily. You left them alone on a doorstep. Do you have any idea what could have happened?" She scoffed. "Oh, please. You act like I abandoned them in a field. You're being dramatic. They knew you'd be home soon. Stop acting like the hero. You're just their uncle, not their parent. You don't understand the kind of sacrifices I make every day." That word again. Sacrifices. Like leaving her kids unattended was something noble. I wanted to slam the phone down, but before I could, she delivered the real betrayal. Her voice dropped into that syrupy, manipulative tone I knew too well. "Honestly, Daniel, if you can't handle watching them, maybe I'll just call CPS myself. Tell them you don't want to care for your own family. See how that looks." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was she threatening to weaponize the system against me again? After everything, I had barely processed the first time she dragged the police into this mess. The thought of her actually filing something with child services sent a chill down my spine. "Are you serious?" I whispered. "You're the one making this hard," she snapped. "You think you're so independent with your little house and your boring job. But the truth is you wouldn't last a day in my shoes. I need help and you're going to give it to me whether you like it or not. And if I have to get Mom and Dad involved or anyone else, I will." I felt something inside me crack. This wasn't just about babysitting anymore. This wasn't even about family. This was control. Emily had decided my life wasn't mine to live, and my parents were right there behind her, ready to prop her up no matter what line she crossed. That night, after I put the twins to bed, I sat in the dark living room, my head in my hands. I thought about every time I'd been forced to swallow my pride, every time I'd been made to feel lesser, every time my accomplishments had been brushed aside because Emily needed something. And now this, leaving her kids on a porch, threatening to call CPS, making me the villain in a story where she was the one destroying trust. I realized then that something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just taking advantage of me. She had betrayed me in a way I couldn't undo. My own sister had turned me into a pawn in her game of excuses and manipulation. And when I thought it couldn't get worse, the next day proved me wrong. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "Daniel, we need to talk. Emily told us what you said last night. We are very disappointed. If you can't be responsible, maybe you shouldn't have the kids over at all." I stared at the message, my pulse hammering in my ears. My own parents, without even asking me what happened, had sided with Emily again. Worse, they believed her version of events where I was the irresponsible one. That was the moment I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep living under their control, under her thumb. Something inside me hardened that night. It wasn't anger anymore. It was resolve. But before I could figure out how to take back control, Emily escalated even further, crossing a line I didn't think she would dare to cross. The real collapse began the following weekend. By then, I had already rehearsed in my head how I would stand firm if Emily tried to drop the kids on me again. I told myself I'd lock the door if I had to, ignore her calls, whatever it took. I was determined to claw back some control. But the thing about people like my sister is they don't play fair. They change the rules before you even realize it. That Friday night, I came home late from work, my mind buzzing with exhaustion. As I pulled into my driveway, I immediately noticed something was wrong. My front porch light was on and, through the window, I could see shadows moving inside my house. My heart lurched. I thought someone had broken in. I ran to the door, fumbling with my keys, only to find the deadbolt already unlocked. I pushed inside and stopped dead. The twins were sprawled on my couch watching cartoons, half-eaten pizza boxes on the coffee table, Juice spilled across the rug, and sitting at my dining table, scrolling on her phone like she owned the place, was Emily. "Surprise," she said without looking up. "The kids wanted to stay here tonight, and honestly, I needed a break. Don't worry, I already put them to bed once, but they got up." I couldn't even find my voice at first. How did you get in?" She smirked, holding up the spare key I'd given Mom years ago for emergencies. "You really shouldn't hide it in such an obvious place." Mom told me where it was. I felt like the ground had been yanked out from under me. She had let herself into my house uninvited and made herself comfortable like this was all part of the plan. I wanted to scream, but the twins were right there. So I stood frozen, gripping the back of a chair, trying to swallow the storm building in my chest. "Emily," I finally managed, "this is not okay. You cannot just come into my house whenever you feel like it. This is my home." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, get over yourself. You're always so dramatic. You live alone, Daniel. What's the big deal? It's not like you're using this space for anything important. You should be grateful you get to spend time with your family." That word again, grateful. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. I sat in my bedroom that night, door locked, while Emily snored on my couch. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts spiraling. My sanctuary, my one safe space, had been invaded. It wasn't just weekends anymore. She had crossed into my daily life, and I was powerless to stop it. The next morning she was gone, leaving behind a mess of crumbs, sticky plates, and 2 empty juice cartons. On the table sat a handwritten note in her rushed scrawl. "Thanks again. You're a lifesaver. I'll bring them by next week." I crumpled the note in my fist, my hands shaking. That was when the hopelessness hit me full force. For the next few days, I walked around like a ghost. At work, I couldn't focus. At home, I jumped at every noise, half expecting her to barge in again. I started locking the deadbolt, then double-checking it 3 times before bed. But I knew the key was still out there, still in her possession. My parents wouldn't listen if I complained. They'd tell me to stop overreacting. And the thought of confronting her again only filled me with dread because every time I tried, she found a way to twist it back on me, to make me the bad guy. That week, during Sunday dinner at my parents' house, the final straw snapped. We were all gathered around the table and Emily was going on about how amazing it was that I'd been so involved with the kids lately. She said it in this syrupy tone, but there was an edge to it, like she was daring me to contradict her. My parents beamed with pride. "See," my mom said, patting my arm. "You're finally stepping up, Daniel. We're proud of you for once." For once. The words lodged in my chest like shards of glass. I had done everything in my life on my own. My education, my house, my career. None of it mattered. What mattered was that I was finally being useful to Emily. I didn't say a word during the rest of dinner. I just sat there, the noise around me fading into a dull roar, thinking about how I had become invisible in my own family. I wasn't a son or a brother anymore. I was a tool, a resource, a backup plan. That night when I got home, I sank onto my couch in the dark. For the first time in years, I felt truly defeated. Not angry, not frustrated, just hollow. They had stripped me down to nothing. But even in that hollow space, a spark flickered. I realized I couldn't keep fighting them head-on. I'd never win that way. Emily thrived on confrontation, and my parents were blind to her faults. If I was going to get out of this, if I was going to take back my life, I would have to be quiet, patient, careful. So I started planning. Not revenge yet, not fully, but small steps. I changed my locks the next morning. I began keeping a journal, documenting every time Emily dumped the kids on me, every message from my parents, every incident. I saved texts, screenshots, voicemails. It felt small, almost insignificant, but it gave me something I hadn't had in months. A sense of control. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Emily wasn't done. She would push further, harder, until she got what she wanted. And when that moment came, I would be ready. The weeks that followed felt like breathing after being held underwater for too long. Changing the locks gave me a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was craving. It was such a simple act, but when I closed the door and turned the new key in the lock, I finally felt like I had reclaimed a small piece of my life. That night, I slept without waking up every hour to check if Emily had barged in again. With that first step, the others came more naturally. I started setting boundaries in subtle ways, not outright confrontations, but quiet lines that I controlled. When Emily texted one Friday afternoon, "Picking you up a pizza, be ready for the kids," I didn't reply. Instead, I let the message sit there unanswered. For the first time, I turned off my phone and drove to a friend's house across town. We watched a movie, ordered Chinese, and laughed like I hadn't laughed in months. By the time I got home, my phone had 17 missed calls and 3 voicemails, most of them from Emily alternating between fake sweetness and seething rage. But nothing happened. The world didn't end. The kids were fine because she'd had no choice but to take care of them herself. That single act of defiance lit something in me. I realized I had more control than I thought. Emily's power only existed because I allowed her to dictate my time, my choices, my life. The moment I withdrew that permission, she was left scrambling. Around that time, I also started focusing more on myself again. Work had always been steady, but I hadn't been ambitious. I'd been too drained, too distracted. Now, with my evenings slowly returning to me, I threw myself into a project I'd been putting off for months. I stayed late a few nights, polishing the presentation, crunching numbers, making sure every detail was airtight. When I finally presented it to my manager, he was impressed. 2 weeks later, I was offered a promotion. It wasn't just about the title or the raise, though that certainly helped, it was the validation. For once, someone looked at me and saw value that had nothing to do with being Emily's brother. I walked out of that meeting feeling taller, lighter, like I was finally stepping into my own life. My social circle grew again, too. Friends I'd quietly drifted away from during the chaos were happy to see me reaching out. I started saying yes to invitations again. Dinners, hikes, even a short weekend trip out of town. That trip especially felt like liberation. Standing on a quiet trail with no buzzing phone, no one pounding on my door, I realized how much I had let my family dictate my existence and how much joy I'd been missing. Even my home began to feel different. Where it had once felt like a prison, invaded and disrespected, I now made it my sanctuary again. I repainted the living room, got rid of the juice-stained rug, even bought myself a new couch. Small changes, but they reminded me that this space was mine. Mine to protect, mine to enjoy, mine to rebuild. Of course, Emily didn't disappear. She still tried to dump the kids on me, still ranted when I refused, still dangled my parents' approval over my head like a weapon, but I didn't react the same way anymore. When she showed up one evening banging on my door, I simply didn't answer. She called me 10 times in a row. I put my phone on silent and went back to cooking dinner. The power she once held slipped a little more with every boundary I enforced. My parents noticed the shift too. At first, they scolded me. Mom saying I was being cold, Dad warning me not to abandon family. But as weeks passed and Emily's complaints grew more frantic, their calls became less accusatory and more uncertain. "Daniel, maybe you could just talk to her," Mom said one evening, her voice wavering. It was subtle, but for the first time, I felt a crack in the unshakable wall of favoritism that had defined my entire life. I didn't gloat, though. I stayed quiet, calm, collected. I knew better than to celebrate too soon. But inside, I felt stronger than I ever had before. And as my confidence grew, so did my plans. Every voicemail, every angry text, every manipulative message from Emily or my parents, I kept saving them. My journal filled with dates, times, exact words, even small details that seemed irrelevant in the moment. I didn't know yet what I would do with all of it, but I knew it mattered. I knew it was building towards something bigger because while my life was finally improving, I could feel the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Emily wasn't used to losing control, and people like her don't go down quietly. I could sense it, the storm she was building. The only question was how far she would go to try to break me again. It happened almost by accident. I wasn't looking for leverage. I was just trying to reclaim pieces of my life. But sometimes when you step back, the truth has a way of surfacing in places you never expected. One evening after work, I stopped at a small cafe near my office. It had become my little ritual lately, a way to mark the end of the day before heading home. I was sipping coffee and scrolling through emails when I overheard two women at the table behind me talking about child custody cases. Normally, I would have tuned it out, but one of them mentioned documentation, how texts, call logs, and patterns of neglect were often the strongest evidence in court. Something clicked in my head. My journal, my screenshots, all the proof I'd been gathering. Up until then, I had been documenting everything almost as therapy, a way to reassure myself that I wasn't imagining things. But suddenly, I realized I wasn't just venting on paper. I was building a record that could be used if it came to that. That night, I dug deeper. I spent hours researching custody, neglect, and abandonment. I read stories of parents who had lost rights because they repeatedly left their kids with others, because they prioritized their personal lives over their children's safety. And with every line I read, my chest tightened. Emily wasn't just irresponsible. What she was doing was dangerous. Leaving her kids on my porch, using me as free childcare, even threatening CPS as a weapon. If anyone was creating a case for themselves, it was her. For the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. If I wanted to, I could walk into a lawyer's office tomorrow and hand over a mountain of evidence showing exactly who Emily was and what she had been doing. The thought scared me at first. These were my niece and nephew. We're talking about their mother. I didn't want to hurt them, didn't want to drag them through something ugly. But as I sat there staring at the stack of notes and screenshots spread across my desk, another feeling began to push its way through the fear. Resolve. Because as much as I love those kids, I knew Emily wasn't protecting them. She was using them. And if she kept spiraling, it was only a matter of time before they ended up in real danger. Meanwhile, things at work were blossoming. The promotion came with new responsibilities, and I rose to the challenge. I started traveling for meetings, networking with people I never would have met before. One night, over dinner with a colleague who used to work in family law, I casually mentioned a friend dealing with a difficult sibling. He didn't pry, but the advice he gave me stuck. The person with the most consistent record usually wins. Emotions can be spun in court. Facts can't. I filed that away. At the same time, Emily's behavior was unraveling. The less I engaged, the more desperate she became. Her texts shifted from demands to guilt trips to outright threats. One read, "If you don't start pulling your weight, don't be surprised if mom and dad cut you out completely." Another, "I swear, Daniel, I'll make sure everyone knows how heartless you are. You'll regret this." I saved them all. The funny thing was, my parents were starting to notice her instability, too, even if they wouldn't admit it outright. When Emily stormed out of Sunday dinner after I calmly refused to take the twins for the week, Mom sighed and said under her breath, "She's been stressed lately." It was the first time I'd ever heard even the faintest crack in their unwavering support of her. And I realized something else. Emily had grown so used to being the golden child that she never thought she'd have to answer for her actions. She believed her word was enough, that Mom and Dad would back her forever, that I would fold no matter what. But I had been patient, careful, deliberate. I was no longer the brother she could push around. I had a good job now, a solid home, a growing support network of friends. I wasn't the scared little sibling standing alone against her favoritism. I was stable, I was respected, and I had proof. Months worth of it. Ready to be used if she tried to drag me down again. That's when I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to confront Emily outright anymore. I wasn't going to beg my parents to understand. Instead, I would let her dig her own hole. I would stay calm, keep records, and position myself exactly where I needed to be. Because eventually, she was going to go too far. I could feel it building. And when she did, when she crossed that last line, I would be ready, not just to defend myself, but to make sure she could never use me or her kids as pawns again. The setup was complete. All I had to do was wait for her to make the fatal mistake. Came on a Saturday night, the kind where you can sense trouble before it even arrives. I was in the middle of cooking dinner, something simple, pasta with garlic and olive oil, when the pounding started on my door. Not a knock, not even a ring of the bell. Pounding, heavy, insistent, entitled. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know it was Emily. I let her pound for a full minute before I opened the door. She stood there, makeup smudged, hair wild, the twins clinging to her legs like shadows. "You're taking them," she barked, shoving their backpacks forward. "No," I said simply, my voice even. Her eyes widened like no one had ever dared tell her that word before. "Excuse me?" I didn't raise my voice, didn't flinch. I said no. "You need to make other arrangements." That was all it took for her to unravel. She launched into a tirade right there on my porch, voice raised so loud the neighbors peeked through their curtains. "You're pathetic, Daniel. Selfish. You've always been a failure, and now you can't even step up for your own family. Mom and Dad were right about you. You'll never be worth anything." The twins shrank back, their eyes wide, while Emily ranted. I didn't argue. I let her scream, and when she threatened again, "Fine. I'll call the cops and tell them you abandoned them. See how you like explaining that." I only nodded slowly. "Go ahead," I said. "But before you do, you might want to know that I've been documenting everything. Every text, every voicemail, every time you left the kids with me without asking, even the night you left them alone on my porch. I have dates, times, screenshots. I've spoken with a lawyer, so if the police come, I'll be ready to show them exactly what's been happening." For the first time, her words caught in her throat. She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. You wouldn't." "I would," I said, calm as stone. "Because I'm done being used. I'm done being your scapegoat. And if you try to drag me down, I'll make sure the truth comes out." "Do you really want CPS looking at your record, Emily?" The silence that followed was electric. Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to spit venom. But the venom wasn't there anymore. Not when she realized I wasn't bluffing. I crouched down to the twins' level, keeping my voice soft. "You two should go with your mom tonight, okay? This isn't your fault." They nodded nervously, clutching their backpacks. Emily sputtered, but she was cornered. She grabbed the twins' hands, yanked them toward the car, and hissed, "This isn't over." But deep down, we both knew it was. The next day, I took the final step. I forwarded a small portion of my documentation, just enough, to my parents. A few screenshots of Emily's threats, a photo of the twins left alone on my porch, a voicemail where she screamed about dumping them on me whether I liked it or not. For once, they didn't call to scold me. Instead, Mom's voice on the phone was quiet, almost trembling. "Daniel, we didn't know it was that bad. I didn't rub it in. I didn't need to. I just said, 'Now you do.'" From that moment on, the calls from Emily slowed. The surprise drop-off stopped. The tone shifted. She wasn't bold anymore. She was cautious, careful, as if afraid I might unleash everything I had. And in a way, that was the sweetest revenge of all. Not yelling, not fighting, not stooping to her level. Just standing my ground with the truth in hand and letting her realize she could no longer control me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the family doormat. I was the one holding the line. But the fallout, the way my parents reacted once the full truth came crashing down, and the way Emily scrambled when she realized the golden child pedestal was finally cracking, that was a storm of its own. The fallout didn't come all at once. It trickled in slowly, like cracks spreading across glass until the whole pane shatters. The first real sign came the following weekend when my parents invited me over for dinner. I almost didn't go. I expected another ambush, another round of guilt tripping. But curiosity got the better of me, so I went. When I arrived, the mood was different. The table was quieter than usual, the air heavy. Emily wasn't there. Over roast chicken and potatoes, my dad finally cleared his throat. "Your sister's upset," he said carefully. "She says you've been difficult. But after seeing those messages, well," he glanced at Mom, who nodded faintly, "we think maybe we've been too hard on you." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was the closest thing I'd ever heard from them. I didn't argue, didn't gloat. I just said, "I needed you to see the truth." The truth worked its way through piece by piece. Emily stopped dropping the kids off entirely. At first I thought she was just regrouping, but then I heard from a mutual friend that she'd been forced to explain herself to a social worker after one of the neighbors reported her screaming fit on my porch. Apparently, someone had recorded it on their phone, kids crying in the background, and sent it in. Combined with the evidence I'd gathered, it was enough to put her on notice. She called me once after that, her voice small, stripped of its usual fire. "You didn't have to go that far," she whispered. I answered calmly, "You left me no choice." Then I hung up. The golden child pedestal she'd stood on for 30 years had finally crumbled. My parents no longer treated her word as gospel. They started checking on me directly instead of running through her. At family gatherings, I noticed the subtle shift. When she spoke, fewer people nodded automatically. When I spoke, people listened. The balance had changed. As for me, I kept living my life. Work was thriving, my home was mine again, and for the first time in years, I felt light. I still saw the twins occasionally, but on my terms, short visits, fun outings, no strings attached. And you know what? They were happier, too. When they came over, they laughed, played, and didn't look at me like I was some reluctant babysitter. They just saw me as Uncle Daniel. Months later, at a family barbecue, I stood in the yard watching Emily sulk at a picnic table, glaring at me while Mom refilled my plate. The old me would have felt guilty, would have tried to smooth things over, but not anymore, because I had finally learned the truth. Family isn't about being used, manipulated, or sacrificed on someone else's altar. Family is about respect, and when they don't give it, you have every right to take your life back. As the sun dipped low and laughter carried across the yard, I caught Emily's eye one last time. She opened her mouth like she wanted to start another fight, but then she saw the look on my face, the calm, unshakable resolve, and she went quiet. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one silenced. I turned away, smiling, and thought to myself, I didn't just win. I finally got free. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My name's Tyler. I'm 20, and this story takes me back to the summer after my sophomore year of college. I came home for break thinking it would be a chance to relax, maybe reconnect a little with my family and save up more money working shifts at the diner I'd worked at since high school. Instead, I walked into a situation that would change the way I looked at my parents forever. I've always been the responsible one in my family. While my younger brother Ryan could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, I was the one expected to keep my head down, work hard, and not complain. Since I was 16, I'd been stashing away every paycheck, every tip, and every extra dollar I could earn into a savings account. By the time I left for college, it was something I was genuinely proud of, my little safety net. I didn't splurge like Ryan did. I didn't beg my parents for money. I was building towards something. An apartment off campus, grad school, maybe even my first car. That account was mine, built penny by penny. Ryan, on the other hand, was a completely different story. At 17, he was already spoiled beyond belief. He had the newest phone, expensive sneakers, and my parents seemed to bend over backward to make sure he never felt deprived of anything. He didn't work a part-time job, didn't save a dime, and somehow still had money to spend. I used to shrug it off as, he's the baby of the family, but deep down it bothered me, especially when I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up past midnight waiting tables, while Ryan stayed home playing video games. When I got home that summer, I noticed right away that something felt off. Ryan was in the driveway revving a brand new motorbike, grinning ear to ear. The thing gleamed in the sunlight, sleek black with chrome edges, the kind of bike you don't just pick up. My first thought was, how on earth could my parents afford that? We weren't poor, but we weren't the type of family that could casually drop that kind of money either. I went inside, dropped my bag, and asked my mom how he managed to get it. She looked at me with this overly casual smile and said, "Oh, your father and I helped him out. It was time he had something nice." That set my stomach twisting, but I didn't push yet. I figured maybe they had dipped into their own savings. Maybe Dad had picked up overtime. It wasn't until later that night when I logged into my banking app that the truth hit me like a punch in the chest. My balance, the one number I always checked like a security blanket, had been completely drained. Every dollar I'd worked for, gone. I sat there staring at the screen, scrolling through the transactions, my hands shaking. The withdrawals weren't even subtle. My dad had been transferring money straight from my savings account into his checking account over the last few months while I was away at school. I confronted them immediately, storming into the living room where Dad was watching TV. My voice cracked when I asked, "Where's my money?" He didn't even flinch. He muted the television, turned to me with this smug little smirk and said, "You should be proud to help your brother out. That motorbike is going to change his life." I felt my chest tighten with rage. Proud. Proud that they had stolen from me. Proud that they thought Ryan's joyride was more important than the years I'd spent working late shifts and eating instant noodles just to save. I let out this laugh, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. Dad's eyes narrowed and he snapped, "What's so funny?" I looked him straight in the eye and said quietly, "Because that account you took from us, and that's where things started to spiral in ways none of us could have predicted. Because that account you took from was in my name only." I finished, my voice low but steady. "You had no right to touch it." The smirk slipped right off my dad's face for a second, though he quickly covered it with his usual scowl. "Watch your tone, Tyler," he said sharply. "We're your parents. We've supported you for 20 years. Don't act like you built that money all by yourself. We made you. We gave you a roof. We let you go to college. The least you can do is help your brother get a start in life." That word, "let," echoed in my head, as if I hadn't earned my scholarships, worked through summers, and fought tooth and nail to cover everything that wasn't. As if college was some gift they could dangle over me like a prize. I tried to reason, though my hands were still shaking. "Dad, that account was supposed to be my future, my money. You didn't even ask me. You just took it. That's theft." Ryan, who had been eavesdropping in the doorway, laughed. "Oh, relax. You act like it's the end of the world. You'll make more money later. I need the bike now." He leaned casually against the frame, looking every bit the smug younger brother who had just won some invisible war. "Besides, it looks way better on me than a bunch of numbers in some account." That was the first time I truly felt the line snap inside me. The one that had held back years of resentment, years of swallowing favoritism, and pretending it didn't matter. My brother had my parents wrapped around his finger, and now he was literally riding around on the back of everything I had built for myself. Mom finally chimed in, her voice soft but patronizing, the way she always did when she tried to smooth things over. "Sweetheart, you'll understand one day. Ryan has been through a lot lately. He needs our support more than you do. You're strong. You can handle setbacks. He's fragile. You know how he gets when he doesn't have nice things. Do you really want him to feel left out?" I just stared at her, floored. Fragile. This was the same kid who'd been babied his entire life, who never faced a consequence that didn't magically disappear when Dad stepped in. Fragile was the excuse they used every single time he messed up. Fragile was why Ryan had never had a job, never paid a bill, never learned the value of anything. "Mom," I said carefully, "you're telling me my years of saving don't matter because Ryan's feelings are more important than my future?" She sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "It's family. Family sacrifices for each other." But it didn't feel like family. It felt like I was a wallet with a pulse, and Ryan was the golden child who could do no wrong. Over the next few weeks, the situation only grew worse. Anytime I tried to bring it up, my dad would shut me down with the same rehearsed lines. "We know what's best for this family. Stop being selfish. We're the worst one. You'll thank us later." Meanwhile, Ryan paraded around the neighborhood on his new bike, bragging to his friends that his parents bought it for him. I started noticing smaller things, too. Little slights I hadn't fully clocked before. My room had been taken over while I was gone, with half my stuff shoved into boxes so Ryan could store his gaming setup there. My mom accidentally gave away a couple of my old clothes, claiming she thought I'd grown out of them, even though I'd told her to leave them. Every meal conversation turned into some way of praising Ryan. His style, his independence, his plans to maybe possibly get a job someday if he felt like it. And me, I was the ghost in my own house. The one who, when I tried to assert myself, was told I was being dramatic. When I asked about paying me back, Dad laughed in my face. "We don't owe you anything. You owe us." One night, Ryan came into my room while I was lying awake, scrolling through my empty account balance for the 100th time. He leaned against the door frame again, that same smirk plastered across his face. "You know, you should be grateful," he said casually. "Without me, what would you even have to complain about? You'd just be some boring college kid with no story to tell." He winked and walked out, his laugh echoing down the hallway. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about the money. It was about power. My parents had handed my brother a weapon, and he was enjoying every second of watching me suffer. And I knew then that if I didn't do something, if I didn't stand up for myself, this wouldn't be the last time they'd take from me. But the way I chose to stand up for myself, that would be the turning point none of them expected. The night things truly snapped was a Saturday in late June. I'd picked up a summer job, busting tables at a steakhouse across town, trying to scrape together whatever I could to start rebuilding. Every paycheck felt like a reminder of what I'd lost, but at least it was something. I'd been working double shifts, barely home, which was probably why I didn't notice what my parents and Ryan were up to until it was too late. I came home around midnight, exhausted, smelling like grease and dishwater, ready to collapse. But when I stepped into my room, I froze. My desk was gone. The laptop I'd saved for, the one I needed for school, was missing. Half my textbooks and notebooks were stacked in boxes, shoved against the wall like clutter. I stormed into the living room where Ryan was sprawled across the couch with his game controller in hand, grinning. "Oh, hey," he said without even pausing his game. "Don't freak out, but I borrowed your laptop. Needed something better for my graphics. That old one of mine couldn't handle it." My stomach sank. "Borrowed," I said slowly. "Where's my desk?" Dad looked up from his chair with that same irritating calm. "We moved it into Ryan's room. He needed more space for school and his hobbies. Don't worry. We'll figure something out for you before you go back to college." I felt heat rush to my face. That laptop isn't just for fun. It has my work, my papers, my research on it. "You can't just..." Ryan cut me off with a laugh. "Relax. I'll give it back eventually. Maybe when I save up for something else. Until then, you can use the family desktop." The family desktop? The ancient, wheezing dinosaur in the corner of the living room that could barely load email, let alone handle the programs I needed for school. That was when the betrayal hit me full force. It wasn't just money anymore. It wasn't just favoritism or small slights. They had stripped away the tools I needed to succeed, the very things I had earned for myself, and handed them to Ryan like party favors. I remember looking at my mom, hoping, praying. For once she'd stand up for me, but she just gave me that same soft, patronizing smile. "Honey, it's just a computer. Don't be so dramatic. You can share. Isn't that what family does?" I couldn't even speak. I just stood there, fists clenched, every word I wanted to say burning in my throat. Over the next week, the humiliation deepened. I'd come home from work to find Ryan sitting at my desk, my laptop open, greasy snack wrappers scattered across the keyboard. My files, my carefully organized folders, had been shoved aside so he could install games. One night, I caught him scrolling through my saved essays, laughing at the titles. "You actually write this stuff? God, no wonder you're broke. Who cares about this garbage?" I started locking the door to my room, but Dad ripped the lock right off, saying, "We don't keep secrets in this house." I tried moving my things into the garage, but Mom insisted the space was too cluttered, and Ryan needed it for his bike gear. Every attempt I made to carve out a space for myself was bulldozed under the excuse that Ryan needed it more. The final blow came the night I got my midsummer paycheck. I'd been watching my account like a hawk, making sure not a single cent went missing again. But when I logged in, my stomach dropped. The balance wasn't right. Not empty, but short by a few hundred. I called the bank immediately, and the representative explained in a careful voice that there had been an authorized user on the account. My father, he'd added himself months earlier without telling me. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. "Of course I added myself," he said like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm your father. Everything you have comes from us anyway. You think you can play at being independent while still under our roof? That money is family money. Don't forget who raised you." I remember Ryan grinning in the background, revving his motorbike keychain like it was some kind of trophy. "Thanks for dinner last night, by the way," he added with a wink. "On you, I guess." That was it. The moment the last bit of trust, of hope that maybe they'd see me as more than a tool, shattered completely. I went to bed that night with my heart pounding, staring at the ceiling, realizing I was trapped in a house where my hard work wasn't just unappreciated. It was being stripped from me piece by piece. And for the first time, instead of just feeling anger or despair, I felt something colder. Resolve. Because if they thought they could keep taking from me without consequence, they had no idea what was coming. The days that followed felt like living inside a slow, crushing weight. Every time I walked through the front door, I could feel my chest tighten, like the air itself carried judgment. My parents barely looked at me unless it was to scold me for attitude or to remind me how lucky I was to have a roof over my head. Ryan, on the other hand, strutted around the house like a king. He'd toss my laptop bag onto the couch when he came home from hanging out with friends, never bothering to ask if I needed it. He left crumbs and soda cans all over my desk. And when I pointed it out, Dad just said, "Don't nitpick your brother. He's got a lot on his plate." What exactly was on his plate? Playing video games, polishing his motorbike, and scrolling through my bank app to see how much money he could guilt my parents into taking next. He'd even wave his phone at me and say things like, "Maybe I'll borrow another 100. You don't mind, right?" Family helps family. Always with that smug smile. Always knowing my parents would back him no matter what. I kept working long shifts at the steakhouse, sometimes until 2 o'clock in the morning, dragging myself out of bed for another round the next day. I barely saw my friends anymore, too ashamed to explain why I couldn't hang out or why I always looked so drained. My coworkers noticed, though. One of them, a waitress named Kelly, pulled me aside during a break and asked, "Are you okay? You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." I wanted to tell her everything. How my own parents had robbed me. How my brother paraded around on stolen money. How I felt invisible in my own home. But the words stuck in my throat. Admitting it out loud felt like it would make it even more real. So I just said, "Yeah, just tired." At home, things only got worse. One night, I came back late and found Ryan hosting half a dozen of his friends in the living room. My laptop was open on the coffee table, music blasting, greasy pizza boxes stacked on top of my textbooks. When I tried to grab my things, one of his buddies laughed. "Oh, this is yours?" Ryan said it was family property now. I froze, heat crawling up my neck, but Ryan just smirked. "Chill out, Tyler. Don't be such a control freak. You're always working anyway. You don't even use this stuff." I carried the pizza-stained textbooks back to my room in silence. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. For the first time, I thought, maybe I should just leave. But then the doubt crept in. Where would I go? I didn't have enough money for rent, not after they drained my account. My car was barely holding together, and the thought of crashing on a friend's couch made me feel like a burden. I felt stuck, pinned between humiliation and helplessness. The lowest point came a week later. I had a huge paper due for a summer course I was taking online, something I needed to keep my scholarship in the fall. When I went to retrieve the file from my laptop, it was gone. Deleted. Hours of work. Gone. Ryan shrugged when I confronted him. "Relax. I needed space for my games. Didn't think your stuff was important." I didn't even yell. I just walked back to my room, shut the door, and sat down on the edge of my bed. For the first time in years, I felt tears sting my eyes. Not just from anger, but from this deep, bone-deep exhaustion. I had nothing left. No money, no tools, no support. And the people who were supposed to have my back were the ones who'd pushed me down. That night, lying in the dark, I realized something. They wanted me weak. They wanted me to accept this role. The hardworking ghost who made sacrifices so Ryan could shine. But the longer I lay there, the more a different thought took root. What if I stopped playing their game? What if, instead of letting them drain me dry, I found a way to use what they'd taken against them? It wasn't clear yet, not fully, but the seed was planted. And as I quietly began writing down plans, tucking notes into the bottom of my backpack where no one would find them. I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The shift didn't happen overnight. First, it was small things. Changes so subtle my parents and Ryan didn't even notice. I started picking up every extra shift I could at the steakhouse, volunteering to cover for coworkers who needed nights off. It meant long hours, aching feet, and days where I practically lived on coffee. But it also meant that slowly, carefully, my paychecks began to grow. This time, I didn't put the money into the account my dad had access to. I marched into the bank one afternoon, exhausted from work but determined, and opened a brand new account in my own name. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even tell my friends. The banker asked if I wanted to add a joint user, and I shook my head so hard it startled her. Just me, I said firmly. Only me. For the first time in months, I felt like I had taken back a little bit of control. Work was grueling but oddly empowering. The more shifts I worked, the more I began to enjoy the independence of it. I didn't owe my parents an explanation. Every dollar was mine, untouched by their hands. And while Ryan bragged about his motorbike and loafed around, I quietly stacked paychecks in my hidden account. It was like having a secret weapon. One night, after a particularly busy dinner rush, the manager pulled me aside. "You've got a solid work ethic, Tyler," he said, looking impressed. "Most of the college kids flake out, but you show up. Keep this up, and there's room for you to move up here." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. For months, I'd been treated like a joke at home, like my hard work meant nothing. But here was someone actually recognizing it, rewarding it. That night, I went home tired, but with a small smile tugging at my lips. Meanwhile, I also began thinking long-term. At school, I had a part-time job lined up for the fall, plus a professor who'd hinted about an internship opening. If I could just hold on through the summer, I'd have not just money, but opportunities. My parents and Ryan might have stolen my savings, but they couldn't steal my drive. Still, I kept up the act. Quiet, compliant, even a little withdrawn. I let Dad lecture me, let Mom guilt me, let Ryan taunt me with his motorbike keys dangling in his hand. Inside, though, I was planning. Every cruel comment, every dollar they took, every book they treated like garbage, it was fuel. I wasn't going to lash out in some reckless burst of anger. No, I was going to be patient, methodical. It was during this period of quiet rebuilding that something unexpected happened. One of the regular customers at the steakhouse, a middle-aged guy who always ordered the same ribeye and coffee, struck up a conversation with me. He asked about school, and I admitted I was studying business. He smiled and said, "You've got the hustle for it. Reminds me of when I was your age." Turns out he owned a small logistics company and was looking for part-time help with data entry and filing. The pay was better than bussing tables, and it could lead to networking opportunities. I took the job. Suddenly, I had two streams of income: cash tips from the steakhouse and a steadier paycheck from the company. I worked myself ragged, but every time I logged into that secret account and watched the numbers climb, I felt stronger. By July, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. My laptop may have been hijacked by Ryan, but I scraped together enough from tips to buy a used one off a coworker. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and I guarded it like treasure. I worked on my coursework late into the night, applying for internships, updating my resume, and all the while, I played the role of the obedient older son at home, quietly listening as Dad praised Ryan's independence for learning how to clean his bike, or Mom cooed about how Ryan deserves nice things. They had no idea that while they were crowning him king of the house, I was out there building a future without them. The funniest part? Ryan started to get restless. A motorbike can only hold someone's attention for so long. And by August, he was already hinting at needing more, new gear, upgrades, maybe even a car next year. I listened to him whine at dinner about how unfair it was that he didn't have what he wanted yet, and I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one drowning. I was climbing, and soon enough, the tables would turn in ways none of them could even imagine. By late August, I had settled into a rhythm. One life at home, another life outside it. At home, I was still the quiet, overlooked son, letting Dad's lectures and Ryan's smug comments slide off me. But outside, I was slowly piecing together a version of myself that my family didn't even know existed. At the logistics company, the data entry job I'd started with began evolving. My boss, Mr. Green, noticed I had a knack for organization. I'd come in early to sort files, streamline spreadsheets, and catch small mistakes others missed. One Friday afternoon, he called me into his office. "You're sharp, Tyler," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I like people who don't just punch a clock, but think ahead." Ever considered project management? I didn't know what to say. No one had ever asked me that what I considered. At home, everything was decided for me, dismissed as selfish or dramatic. Here, someone was asking me what I wanted. I'd like to," I admitted. He nodded. "Good. We've got some training modules. Stick around with us and you'll have real responsibilities by next year." That moment planted a seed. This wasn't just a summer job. It was a stepping stone into something bigger. If I played it right, I could build a career here, one my parents couldn't take away. Meanwhile, I was also learning practical things, useful things. Working at the logistics company gave me an inside look at contracts, supply chains, and financial records. I wasn't stealing information, but I was paying attention. I saw how businesses protected themselves with clauses, how they tracked every cent, how they kept detailed records so nothing slipped through. And I thought back to my own drained account, to Dad casually helping himself to money that wasn't his, to Ryan laughing at me like it was all some game. The difference was staggering. Out there in the real world, everything had to be accounted for. At home, my parents treated my savings like their personal piggy bank. And the more I saw that contrast, the more an idea began forming in the back of my mind. The second piece of my setup came through the steakhouse. By then, I wasn't working as many shifts there, but I'd built good relationships with the staff. The manager, a wiry guy named Carlos, trusted me enough to let me help with scheduling and balancing registers at the end of the night. I wasn't handling huge sums of money, but I was learning again the importance of paper trails, of keeping everything clean and recorded. I started keeping my own records, too. Quietly at night in my room, I began documenting every withdrawal from my old account, every unauthorized transaction my father had made, every instance where Ryan had taken something that was mine. I wasn't sure yet what I'd use it for, but I knew one thing. Evidence had power. It was around this time that Ryan's greed tipped the balance in my favor. He started pushing my parents for more: new bike gear, a gaming chair, money to take a girl out. He framed it like he was maturing, like these things were needs rather than wants. And my parents, stretched thinner than they wanted to admit, began to look uneasy. I overheard late-night whispers in the kitchen about credit card bills, about how expensive supporting Ryan had become. That was when I realized I was standing at a crossroads. They had drained me dry once, and they'd do it again the second they found out I had money saved, unless I played this carefully. So I doubled down on the act. At dinner, when Ryan bragged about needing new boots for his bike, I nodded and said nothing. When Dad complained about bills, I shrugged like I didn't have a penny to my name. I made myself small, invisible, harmless, because the less they suspected, the more time I had to grow stronger. And behind the scenes, I kept building. My savings account grew. My boss gave me more responsibility. I quietly applied for scholarships and internships that could take me out of my parents' reach for good. Every step I took was like pulling a thread tighter, weaving a net that would eventually trap them in their own choices. By the time fall approached, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was positioned. For the first time, I had money they couldn't touch, skills they didn't know I had, and allies outside the house who respected me. And in the shadows of my own planning, I began to see the shape of something bigger forming. Because when the moment came to strike back, I didn't just want to stand up for myself. I wanted to make sure they could never use me like that again. The moment of truth came sooner than I expected. It was late September, just before I was set to head back to campus. The tension in the house had reached a boiling point. Ryan had started complaining nonstop that his motorbike needed upgrades. New exhaust? Better tires? Some custom paint job. And of course, he expected my parents to foot the bill. One evening at dinner, he leaned back in his chair, twirling his fork between his fingers. "So, Dad, I was thinking we could dip into Tyler's account again. He doesn't need it. I mean, he's already got scholarships, right? And he's living under your roof. It's only fair. I froze. Not because I was afraid they couldn't touch my new account, but because I realized Ryan still thought my money was his safety net. He had no idea I'd outgrown their grip. Dad cleared his throat. That's not a bad idea, son. Tyler's been awfully quiet lately. He can afford to help out again. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This was it. The perfect chance. I put my fork down slowly, keeping my face as neutral as possible. Actually, that's fine. Go ahead and check. Ryan's grin widened. See? He finally gets it. After dinner, Dad logged into the old account from the family desktop. I leaned against the doorway, watching his smug confidence curdle into confusion. He clicked, refreshed, clicked again. Finally, he turned toward me, frowning. Why is the balance still empty? Where's your paycheck money? I shrugged. What paycheck money? Ryan piped up. Don't play dumb. You've been working double shifts all summer. There should be something in there. I smiled faintly, just enough for them to see it. Oh, I stopped using that account months ago. Opened a new one. In my name only. You don't have access. The silence that followed was heavy, almost comical. Ryan's face twisted in disbelief. Wait, you mean you've been hiding money this whole time? Dad's jaw clenched. You ungrateful little. I cut him off, my voice calm but sharp. Ungrateful? You stole from me. You didn't just take money. You took years of my work, my laptop, my future. And you expected me to keep letting it happen. So no, I'm not ungrateful. I'm done. For the first time, they didn't have a comeback. But that was only the opening move. The real revenge came a few days later. I'd been meticulously saving every record. Bank statements, transaction logs, screenshots of transfers my dad made from my old account. I'd even noted dates and amounts of withdrawals that lined up with Ryan's motorbike purchase. I printed it all out, neatly organized in a folder, and walked it straight into the branch manager's office at the bank. I explained everything. How I was the sole account holder, how my father had added himself as an unauthorized user, how money had been siphoned off without my consent. The manager's expression darkened as he flipped through the pages. This is serious, he said. You could pursue legal action. And that's exactly what I set in motion. I didn't tell my family at first. I let them believe their intimidation still worked, that I was just sulking. Meanwhile, the bank launched an investigation, freezing the old account and flagging the transactions. The fallout started small. My dad tried to withdraw money one afternoon, only to be told the account was locked. I watched from the couch as he came home red-faced and muttering. Ryan asked if he could still get his upgrades, and Dad snapped at him for the first time in months. For me, it was like watching dominoes tip over in slow motion. Then came the letter, official, sealed, and addressed to me. I opened it at the kitchen table while my parents watched. It explained that the bank had found my father's withdrawals unauthorized. They were offering to restore the stolen funds to me directly and advised that I could press charges for fraud if I wished. The color drained from Dad's face as I read it aloud. Ryan sputtered, "You can't. He's your father." I looked at him, calm and steady. A father protects his kids. He doesn't steal from them. That night, my mom tried to corner me in the hallway, tears in her eyes. "Tyler, please. You don't understand what this will do to our family. Can't you just forgive and forget?" But the thing was, I did understand. For the first time, I had the power. They treated me like nothing, like a bank account with a body, and now the tables had turned. And I wasn't about to waste the opportunity. I didn't sleep much the night after the letter came. For hours I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, weighing the choice in front of me. Part of me still carried that old instinct to back down, to swallow the pain, to keep the peace. But another part of me, the part that had worked double shifts, built a secret account and learned how to survive without them, knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with the letter spread out in front of me. My dad walked in, his jaw tight, eyes red like he hadn't slept either. Ryan trailed behind him, quieter than usual, which was rare. My mom clutched a coffee mug like it was the only thing holding her together. Dad started in immediately. Tyler, let's be reasonable. You don't need to make this ugly. We're family. Family works these things out. I let him finish, then calmly slid the folder of evidence across the table. You didn't treat me like family when you drained my account, or when you gave my laptop to Ryan, or when you called me selfish for not letting you take more. You treated me like a resource, and now I'm done. Ryan scoffed, trying to bring back some of his usual bravado. So what? You're gonna throw Dad in jail? You'd ruin your own family over some money? I turned to him, meeting his eyes. It's not just about money. It's about respect. Something none of you gave me. Actions have consequences. You taught me that lesson the hard way. When I formally filed the fraud complaint through the bank, it was like lighting a fuse. Investigators began asking questions, and Dad quickly realized how bad it looked. Unauthorized access, transfers lining up perfectly with Ryan's motorbike purchase. Months of evidence neatly recorded by me. There was no spinning it as family sharing. The bank sided with me, restoring every stolen dollar into my private account. And as for Dad, he wasn't arrested, not yet. But he was slapped with a fraud warning that would stain his record for years. His credit score took a nosedive, and the whispers in town weren't kind. Everyone knew my family. Suddenly, people started connecting the dots. Why Ryan had a flashy new bike while I was bussing tables late into the night. The respect my father had always clung to in the community evaporated. The tension at home reached a breaking point. My mom begged me daily to undo this before it destroyed them, but I stood firm. Ryan raged, screaming about how unfair it was, how I had ruined everything for him. He stopped riding the bike around as proudly because now everyone who saw it knew it had been bought with stolen money. His friends stopped coming around, too. Nobody likes standing next to a sinking ship. As for me, I packed my bags early for school. I didn't wait for tearful apologies that never came. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of my old room, now cluttered with Ryan's junk, and looked at my parents one last time. You wanted me to sacrifice for family, I said quietly. But real family doesn't bleed one person dry so another can live large. You taught me that lesson better than anyone. Dad tried to speak, but his voice cracked, and for once he had no words. Ryan glared, his fists clenched but powerless. Mom just wept into her hands. I turned, walked out to my car, and drove away with my restored savings and something far more important: my independence. Months later, as I sat in my off-campus apartment, working late on a project for my internship, I thought back to that night in the kitchen when Dad smirked and told me I should be proud to help Ryan. Now, it was me smirking, because the account they had drained wasn't just my savings. It had been my first real lesson in power, and I had learned it well. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I arrived with my suitcase for the family trip. My mom said coldly, "We decided you'd be happier at home." My sister laughed. I just smiled and left. That night, they sent a request, $15,600. Your share. I sent back $50 with a note. To be continued. 2 days later, they stared in shock as I walked into the resort lobby. For as long as I can remember, I was the one who quietly kept the family machine running. Whenever my mom came up short on bills, I was the one who transferred money without hesitation. When my sister needed tuition help, I covered it, even when she never bothered to thank me. And family trips, I usually paid more than my share because otherwise nothing would actually get booked. So, when the group chat started buzzing about this year's family vacation, a week at a resort that costs more than most people's yearly rent, I didn't question it. I just assumed, like always, that I was included. I'd already booked my time off work, bought a couple of new shirts, and even arranged for a friend to feed my dog while I was gone. The day came and I showed up with my suitcase. I still remember the weight of it as I walked across the driveway toward the SUV. My mom was standing by the trunk with her arms crossed, and my sister was in the passenger seat laughing at something on her phone. I popped the trunk and lifted the suitcase, ready to slide it in. That's when my mom stopped me. She didn't even hesitate. She just looked at me with this cold expression and said, almost like she was reading from a script, that they had decided I'd be happier staying home. I froze for a second, thinking maybe I misheard. Happier at home. I looked at my sister and she smirked before actually laughing out loud, like this was the punchline to a joke I wasn't in on. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask for an explanation. I just lowered the suitcase back down, zipped it up tight, and wheeled it back to my car. My mom didn't stop me. My sister was still laughing as I closed my door and drove away. On the way home, I expected to feel hurt or angry, but strangely I didn't. What I felt was clarity. I had been paying for years, literally and emotionally, and now they had shown me exactly where I stood. They didn't want me there, but they wanted my money. That thought stuck with me the whole ride back. Later that night, the proof arrived. My phone buzzed and I saw a payment request in the family group account. $5,600. The note attached read simply, "Your share of the trip." I actually laughed when I saw it. After telling me I wasn't wanted, they still had the audacity to treat me like their personal ATM. In the past, I probably would have paid it just to avoid conflict. But this time, something in me snapped. I pulled up the app, typed in $50, and sent it back with a note. To be continued. I knew they'd be furious. I could already picture my sister whining about how unfair I was being and my mom trying to guilt-trip me about family responsibilities. But I didn't care. For once, I wasn't reacting to their drama. I was setting the stage. What they didn't know was that I had been quietly preparing for this moment for a long time. I had been watching how they treated me, how they dismissed me, and how they only valued me when I was footing the bill. And I had started making plans, real plans that they had no idea about. 2 days later, those plans came to life. Because while they were lounging by the pool at their overpriced resort, the last thing they expected was to see me walk into the lobby. And I wasn't alone. I planned my arrival down to the hour. 2 days in, when they'd already settled into vacation mode, when they'd stopped pretending to feel guilty about excluding me, my sister had been plastering Instagram with her usual perfect life shots. Poolside cocktails, a boomerang of her laughing in the ocean, even a picture of my mom with some cheesy caption about quality family time. Not once did they mention me. It was almost like I had been erased. That morning, I rolled my suitcase across the polished marble lobby. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and citrus, the kind of place where every corner was designed to remind you of how much money you were spending. I spotted them instantly. My mom and sister were standing at the front desk mid-conversation with a clerk about upgrading their suite. My sister turned, about to make some snarky remark, but the words caught in her throat. Her face froze. My mom turned next, and the blood drained from her expression so quickly I thought she might faint. And then their eyes dropped to the people standing beside me. On my right was my grandfather, upright and sharp-eyed despite his age, holding the reservation folder. On my left, my grandmother, with that quiet but unmistakable presence that always managed to cut through any room. My mother hadn't spoken to them properly in years, claiming they were too judgmental. My sister only ever called them when she needed money. But here they were, standing beside me. They didn't know I'd invited them until the last moment. After my mom and sister had cast me aside, I called my grandparents more out of desperation than strategy. I told them everything. Their reaction was immediate. They insisted on coming. Not only that, they booked their own suite, paid their own way, and told me in no uncertain terms that no one was going to make me feel like the unwanted outsider again. So, when the clerk asked if we were checking in, my grandfather didn't hesitate. He handed over the papers, his voice firm but polite, and the clerk welcomed us warmly. He didn't even glance at my mother or sister. The silence between the four of us could have shattered glass. My sister finally blurted something about how random it was that I showed up. My grandmother cut her off. She told them, calm and direct, that if they thought leaving me behind was acceptable, then maybe they needed to take a hard look at themselves. My mom opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. For once, she had nothing. We took the keys, thanked the staff, and walked toward the elevators. I didn't even need to speak. Just walking past them with my grandparents at my side was enough. But that night, things escalated. My grandparents arranged for us all to have dinner together at one of the resort's restaurants. It wasn't optional. They wanted the whole family at the table. So there we were. My mom stiff and quiet. My sister staring at her phone but clearly listening. My grandparents across from them. And me, sitting between the people who had always treated me like an afterthought. The table was long, the setting expensive, the food plated like artwork, but the air was heavy. Halfway through the meal, my grandfather set his fork down. He looked directly at my mom and asked why she thought it was acceptable to treat me like I didn't belong. My mom tried to laugh, called it a misunderstanding, as if I had simply misinterpreted being told to stay home. My grandmother didn't let it slide. She started listing examples. How many times I had helped with bills, how I covered for my sister's tuition shortfall, how they leaned on me every time something went wrong, and how they gave back nothing but silence or mockery. My sister shifted in her seat, cheeks red. My mom tried to steer the conversation back to the food, to the weather, anything. But my grandparents weren't budging. Finally, my grandfather leaned back, folded his hands, and said quietly but firmly, "If this is how you treat the one person who supports you most, maybe it's time we reconsider who we support in the future." The words landed heavier than any raised voice could. My mom's face went pale. My sister stopped pretending to scroll her phone, and for once, neither of them had a comeback. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I just let the silence do its work. And in that silence, I realized something. This trip wasn't going to just be a vacation. It was going to be a reckoning. Want me to roll into part 3 now, where the inheritance talk really begins and the manipulation games start? The morning after that dinner, the atmosphere around the resort changed completely. My mom and sister were no longer strutting around like they owned the place. They avoided eye contact with my grandparents and even with me. Every time we crossed paths near the pool or at breakfast, there was this awkward tension, like they were trying to figure out how much damage had been done the night before. But my grandparents weren't finished. They had been silent for too long, watching from the sidelines as I carried the weight of family responsibilities while being treated like I didn't matter. Now they were taking every opportunity to set the record straight. At lunch that day, my grandfather brought it up again. He asked my mom when was the last time she had called him just to talk, not to ask for something. My mom fumbled, said she was busy with life, and tried to change the subject. He didn't let her. My grandmother pressed harder, pointing out that whenever I needed help, they never hesitated. But when she or my mom needed help, suddenly there was always an excuse. My sister rolled her eyes at first, but when my grandmother turned the attention to her, asking about the countless ignored phone calls, the birthdays she skipped, and the way she only reached out when she was short on rent, she went quiet. It was the first time I had ever seen the two of them truly cornered. Then my grandfather shifted the conversation to the one thing my mom and sister cared about more than anything: inheritance. He didn't say it outright, but the message was clear. He talked about how money was only meaningful if it went to someone who respected the people who gave it. He said he and my grandmother had worked their whole lives to build something to pass on, but lately they were questioning who actually deserved it. The silence at that table was almost unbearable. My mom finally spoke, insisting that of course she respected them, that of course my sister cared. She spun it as though their distance was just bad communication, and that it didn't mean they didn't love them. But my grandmother wasn't buying it. She said, "Love isn't measured in excuses. It's measured in actions." And by their actions, my mom and sister had made it clear who they valued: themselves. I didn't say anything. I just sat there sipping my drink, letting the words sink in. That night, my mom knocked on my hotel room door. She hadn't done that in years. She came in, sat down, and started talking fast about how she felt misunderstood and how things had been misinterpreted. Then she slipped into familiar territory, telling me that we were family and had to stick together, that money didn't matter as much as unity. But it was obvious what she was really saying. She wasn't worried about family. She was worried about losing something much bigger. And for the first time in my life, I didn't give her the answer she expected. I told her I was tired of being the one they leaned on, tired of being the outsider who still paid the bill. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. I just said that things weren't going back to the way they used to be. Her expression was a mix of shock and fear. She wasn't used to me drawing a line. What I didn't tell her was that this was only the beginning. My grandparents had already hinted at bigger decisions coming, decisions that would change everything when it came to who they trusted with their legacy. And this time, no amount of pleading or manipulation was going to save her. It was almost comical how quickly my mom and sister changed their behavior once the conversation about inheritance came up. The same people who laughed when I was told to stay home were now putting on the most desperate act of perfect family. The next morning, I walked past the pool and nearly stopped in disbelief. My sister, who normally acted like fetching her own water was beneath her, was actually carrying towels for my grandparents. She smiled so wide it looked painful, offering to order drinks, chatting like they were best friends. My mom sat beside them, nodding along, complimenting everything. The weather, the resort, the food, as if she hadn't spent years avoiding phone calls from them. It was a performance, plain and simple, and everyone knew it. But the scary thing was how natural they made it look, like they had been rehearsing. My grandparents played along politely, but I caught the little glances they exchanged when my mom or sister tried too hard. They weren't buying it. That afternoon, my mom pulled me aside. She started with small talk, then slid into a rehearsed speech about how families have rough patches and how it was important to heal. She kept repeating that we all had to stand together, as if that erased the way she had iced me out just days before. When that didn't seem to get the reaction she wanted, she lowered her voice and told me that I should support her in front of my grandparents, that if they were questioning where the inheritance went, I could vouch for her. She framed it like I'd be protecting the family legacy, but the desperation in her eyes made it clear she was terrified of losing money. I didn't respond. I just looked at her long enough for her to squirm and walked away. Later, my sister tried her own approach. She cornered me near the elevators and whispered fast, like she was confessing a crime. She said if the grandparents cut her out, she'd be done for. She admitted she had already taken out loans, expecting she'd have something to fall back on from them. I almost laughed. She had literally gone into debt banking on money she didn't even have. When I asked why she thought she deserved it, her mask slipped. She said I'd always been the favorite, that everything came easier for me, and that she had to fight for scraps. It was the first time she actually said what I had felt all along. She didn't see me as family. She saw me as an obstacle. But the real shock came that night at dinner. My grandparents called everyone to sit together again. The table was set with wine, the kind of meal meant to feel celebratory, but the mood was tense. Halfway through, my grandfather reached into his bag and placed a thick folder on the table. My mom's fork clattered against her plate. My sister stopped mid-sip. It was their will. He didn't sugarcoat it. He said they had been revising their estate plans, and after watching how things unfolded on this trip, they had decisions to make. My mom immediately tried to shut the conversation down, saying it was morbid and inappropriate. My grandmother cut her off cold. She said, "If not now, when?" They weren't interested in secrecy. Then came the part none of us expected. My grandfather explained that inheritance wouldn't just be money. It would come with responsibility. Whoever inherited would be expected to oversee charitable donations, manage their properties, and ensure the family's obligations were kept. It wasn't just wealth. It was duty. My mom looked blindsided. She had never cared about responsibilities. My sister looked furious, like she'd been tricked. Then my grandfather turned directly to me. His voice was steady. He asked if I was willing to accept those responsibilities, if I was prepared to step into that role. He didn't ask anyone else, just me. The table went silent. My mom stared at me like she'd just been betrayed. My sister's jaw tightened, her hands gripping her wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. And then came the truly unexpected moment. My grandmother added something I hadn't even considered. They weren't just talking about the future. They were considering transferring a significant amount to me immediately to see how I handled it while they were still alive. A test. The shock was written all over my mom's face. My sisters, too. They weren't just afraid of losing something years from now. They were terrified that their grip on the present was slipping and that I was the one being handed control. For the first time, I realized they weren't just desperate, they were scared. And the scarier thought? I hadn't even given my answer yet. The day after the will folder appeared on the dinner table, everything changed. The polished act my mom and sister had been putting on started to unravel fast. At breakfast, I watched them from across the dining hall. My sister jabbed at her food, whispering furiously, while my mom kept shaking her head. Every so often, their voices rose enough for me to catch fragments. My sister was saying things like, "You ruined this for us?" and "They're handing everything to him because of you." My mom fired back with, "Don't blame me. You've never even cared about them." It was like cracks spreading across glass. Quiet at first, but growing louder and more obvious with every hour. Later, while my grandparents were in their suite resting, my mom caught me near the elevators. There was no smile this time, no gentle tone. She told me flat out that if I accepted their offer, I'd regret it, that I'd be dividing the family, destroying any chance of reconciliation. She said it like a warning, not a plea. I asked her one question. When was the last time she cared about family unity before money was on the table? She didn't answer. She just looked at me for a long second, almost as if she wanted to say something but couldn't, then walked away without another word. That same afternoon, I saw something that told me just how far gone my sister really was. She was pacing in the lobby with her phone pressed tight to her ear, speaking fast, her voice sharp. I stayed out of sight, but close enough to hear. She was telling someone, her boyfriend, I realized, that everything was going to me, that she was screwed, and that he'd have to hold off on plans. The way she spoke, it sounded like they had been counting on the money for something big. Not just bills, something deeper, riskier. That planted a seed of suspicion in my mind. What exactly had she gotten herself into? By evening, the tension reached a breaking point. My grandparents had arranged a family dinner in one of the resort's private dining rooms. It was supposed to be a calm setting, but within 10 minutes, my mom and sister were at each other's throats. My mom accused my sister of being lazy, of only ever showing up when she needed money. My sister snapped back that my mom was the one who raised her to chase money instead of respect. Voices rose. People at nearby tables glanced over. My grandparents didn't step in. They let it happen, watching silently like judges at a trial. Then something unexpected slipped out of my sister's mouth. She blurted through clenched teeth that she needed the money now and that without it, she was done for. She said it too loudly, and I saw the way my grandparents' eyes narrowed. My mom immediately hissed at her to shut up, but it was too late. That was the first time I realized my sister wasn't just afraid of losing inheritance. She might have been hiding a serious problem. Debt, obligations, maybe something worse. And whatever it was, she just exposed it to the very people she wanted to impress. Finally, my grandfather put his fork down. The sound was soft but final, cutting through their bickering. He told us this. What we were witnessing was exactly why they were making changes. He said inheritance wasn't supposed to tear families apart, but it was already doing exactly that. Then he turned to me. Calm, steady, he said after dinner he and my grandmother wanted to meet with me privately. The entire table froze. My mom's face drained of color, her lips pressed thin. My sister sat rigid, staring at her plate, gripping her wine glass so hard her knuckles whitened. Whatever was about to happen, they both knew it wasn't going to go their way. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about punishment. This was about my grandparents making a choice they had been considering for years. The only question was, how far would my mom and sister go to stop it? After dinner, my grandparents asked me to walk with them back to their suite. My mom tried to stand, insisting she come too, but my grandmother shut her down with a single look. My sister didn't even try. She just slumped back in her chair, glaring at me like I had stolen something from her. Inside their suite, the atmosphere was calm. My grandfather poured tea. My grandmother sat across from me. And for the first time, there were no distractions, just the three of us. They told me they had been watching for years. How I supported everyone quietly. How I never asked for much. How I was the only one who showed real respect. My grandmother admitted that they'd once assumed my mom and sister would grow up, that they'd eventually take responsibility. But after this trip, they had no illusions left. Then came the announcement. They had decided that my mom and sister would not inherit anything. Not the money, not the properties, not even family keepsakes. Everything, every account, every asset, every responsibility would be transferred to me, and it wouldn't wait until after they passed. My grandfather wanted to start the process immediately so they could see how I managed while they were still alive. I sat there in stunned silence. It was more than I expected, more than I ever asked for. My grandfather leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. "We don't reward greed. We reward trust." The next morning, word spread fast. My mom cornered me first, furious, her voice breaking as she said it wasn't fair. She said she had built her life expecting that money. My sister cried openly, saying she had nowhere to go if they cut her off. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I just listened. And then came the twist none of them expected. At breakfast, in front of all of us, my grandfather calmly announced that he had already transferred a portion of the funds, $100,000, directly into my account. Seed capital, he called it. A foundation for my future. My mom's face went white. My sister nearly dropped her fork. They tried everything after that. Suddenly, they were warm, affectionate, asking me to be fair and share. They told my grandparents they changed and that they just needed a second chance. But my grandparents didn't bend. They had seen too much for too long. By the time the trip ended, the shift in power was obvious. My mom and sister walked through the resort with forced smiles, but behind them, the bitterness leaked through. They couldn't hide it anymore. They had lost. And me? For once, I felt free. Not because of the money, but because I finally understood where I stood. Their control over me was gone. Their games, their manipulation, it all ended the moment I stopped playing along. When we returned home, my phone lit up with messages from them. Apologies, promises, invitations to dinner. Suddenly, I was the center of their attention. But I didn't reply because deep down I knew the truth. They didn't want me. They wanted what I had. And thanks to my grandparents, that was one thing they would never touch again. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I said enough and stopped being generous to my ungrateful family and stopped paying for my sister's education. But they came and demanded access to my trust account. I laughed. I think there's a limit to how much you can give before something inside you finally cracks. For me, that moment came after years of being the responsible one in a family that never learned the value of hard work. I was the one who worked insane hours, hustled like my life depended on it, and managed to pull myself out of the mess they were in. But apparently, success came at a price. Everyone expected me to carry them. At first, I didn't mind helping. I knew my parents weren't great with money, but they were my parents. Family, right? And my sister, Jessica, she had potential. She'd been talking about being a lawyer since she was 10. So when my parents came to me 2 years ago and asked if I could help her pay for law school, I listened. They painted this whole picture of how she could really make something of herself, how she'd be able to give back to the family someday. I bought it. Okay, I told them. But there are strings attached. I didn't want to throw money down the drain. I worked too hard for every dollar. I laid it out. No partying, no slacking off. If I'm paying her $38,000 a year, she better be serious. Of course, they agreed without hesitation. Everybody's on their best behavior when there's money on the line. Things were good at first. I felt good about helping. I'd done something important, something that could change Jessica's life. But that didn't stop the guilt from creeping in. Monica, my girlfriend, was my partner in every way. We'd been together for years, and we split everything equally. Rent, utilities, groceries, half and half. Monica is not a freeloader. She works just as hard as I do. And yet, here I was spending tens of thousands of dollars on my family when I could barely afford to take her out to dinner. I hadn't bought Monica flowers in years. Not once had I planned a surprise weekend getaway or anything close to it. I kept telling myself, next month. But somehow that month never came. I was too busy playing hero to a family that saw me only as an ATM with a pulse. The breaking point came out of nowhere. My dad's sister, Aunt Rachel, came to town for a visit. She and I have always gotten along. She's sharp, no nonsense, and I trust her. Apparently, She went over to my parents' house and caught them in the middle of a conversation about me. That's where it all unraveled. She told me how they complained about me, how I was controlling because I set the terms for Jessica's tuition, and how I thought I was better than them just because I had money. They even laughed about it. My parents, my sister, the same people I'd sacrificed for, mocking me behind my back. They called me arrogant and ungrateful. My sister apparently said she hated how I made her feel like a beggar. Aunt Rachel didn't say anything to them at the time. She pretended to brush it off. But the next day, she came straight to my apartment and told me everything. I'll never forget the look on her face when she told me. It was like she couldn't believe what she had heard. Monica sat next to me on the couch while Rachel spoke. When she finished, the room was silent. I could feel Monica's anger simmering just below the surface. She didn't even wait for Rachel to leave before she told me, "You have to cut her off right now. They don't deserve another penny from you." I knew she was right. Part of me wanted to block their numbers and be done with it, but another part of me wanted revenge. I wanted them to see me face to face and hear what I had to say. I wanted to see the look on their faces when I told them they were cut off forever. Monica kept pushing for no contact. "Don't sink to their level," she said. I knew she had a point. Still, I couldn't bring myself to cut them off. I did stop the tuition, though. No warning, no explanation. I just let them figure it out for themselves. First, nothing happened. A whole month went by without a word from either of them. It was almost peaceful. Then the tuition bill came due. That's when the phone calls started. Jessica called first, then my mom, then my dad. I ignored each of them. The calls went on for days. I'd see my phone light up with their names, but I wouldn't even flinch. Until one night there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when Monica looked out the peephole and whispered, "It's your parents?" I felt an adrenaline rush. "They really came here?" I asked. "Yes," she said in a low voice. "What do you want to do?" I stared at the door for a moment, my mind racing. I had no idea what they were going to say, but I knew one thing. This conversation was going to change everything. I stood there for a moment debating whether or not to open the door. Monica gave me a look that said, "You don't owe them anything." And she was right. But this wasn't just about cutting them off. I wanted them to know that they couldn't manipulate me anymore. They had used me, trashed me behind my back, and now they were standing outside my apartment like nothing had happened, expecting me to bail them out. I took a deep breath and opened the door. My parents were standing there, looking awkward, as if they hadn't expected me to actually answer. My dad gave me a nervous half-smile. My mom, always the more confrontational one, jumped right in. "Jack, honey, we've been trying to reach you. Are you okay? You haven't returned our calls." "Yeah, I noticed," I said flatly, leaning against the door frame. Their eyes darted back and forth. They knew something was wrong, but they were still trying to play it cool. My mom continued, her voice becoming more urgent. "Jessica called us. The school says they haven't received payment for this semester. We're worried. Is something wrong?" I crossed my arms. "No, nothing is going on. I just decided not to pay for it anymore." The shock hit them both at the same time. My mom's eyes widened and my dad shuffled uncomfortably on his feet. He wasn't one for confrontation unless absolutely necessary. But this time he spoke up. "Jack, come on. We had an agreement. You can't just pull out without giving us a heads up." "Oh, I can't," I said, my voice cold. Especially after what Aunt Rachel told me. Their faces dropped as if I'd slapped them. My mom tried to play dumb. "What are you talking about? What did Rachel say?" "Oh, the part where you all sat around and called me a controlling, arrogant jerk who made Jessica feel like a pauper. The part where you laughed about how I wouldn't understand your struggles because I have a trust account." I stared at her hard. "Funny thing is, I work my ass off for every dollar in that account. But I guess that part doesn't matter, right?" They froze. My mom's mouth opened and closed like she was struggling for words. My father just stared at the floor. Finally, my mom tried to recover. "Jack, you don't understand. We were just blowing off steam. We didn't mean it. We were frustrated. Jessica's been under a lot of pressure and sometimes people say things they don't mean." "Right?" I said, sarcasm dripping from my voice. You didn't mean it. You just happened to say exactly how you really felt behind my back. I shook my head. Spare me the excuses. I paid $38,000 last year to help Jessica live her dream. All I asked was that you be honest and grateful. But instead, you treated me like your personal bank and threw me under the bus. My father finally spoke again, his voice more serious this time. All right, we screwed up, son. We shouldn't have said those things. But cutting Jessica off like this isn't fair. You're ruining her chances. And for what? A few harsh words? You can't just let this destroy our family. That's when the conversation took a turn I wasn't expecting. My mother hesitated for a moment, then said carefully, "Look, Jack, maybe if you're so upset about the money situation, there's another solution." I narrowed my eyes. "What are you getting at?" She exchanged a look with my father before answering. "We were thinking, since you have the trust fund, maybe it would be easier if you gave us access to it. Just temporarily to take some of the pressure off. That way Jessica can stay in school and we can stop bothering you with money." The audacity of it hit me like a punch in the gut. They wanted access to my trust account, my entire future security. After everything they'd said about me, they thought I'd give up control of my finances. I started to laugh. Not a normal laugh. A bitter, hollow one. "You want access to my trust fund?" I repeated in disbelief. "Do you really think I'd let you touch a dime after all this?" "Jack, we're just trying to help." "Help you, you mean?" I snapped. "That's what it's always been about. I'm done. You can figure out Jessica's tuition on your own. I'm cutting you off for good." My mother's face twisted in anger. "You're being unreasonable. We're your family. You're acting like a cheap, heartless stranger." "Yeah, well, maybe you should have treated me like family instead of a damn ATM." I shot back. They tried to argue, but I didn't give them the chance. I slammed the door in their faces. For a moment, I just stood there, my blood boiling. Monica came over and put a hand on my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. I nodded, but I wasn't. I felt betrayed on a level I hadn't thought possible. A few days passed without any contact from them. For once, the silence was welcome. I tried to focus on work, on spending time with Monica, on anything but them. I thought they'd finally gotten the message, but then something happened that neither of us expected. It was late at night when I heard a loud crash from outside. I jumped up and ran to the window. One of the front windows of my apartment was shattered, and shards of glass were scattered all over the floor. "What's going on?" Monica gasped as she joined me at the window. I looked outside but saw nothing but darkness and an empty street. No sign of who had done this. All I knew was that this wasn't some random accident. It felt personal, and deep down, I had a sickening feeling that this was just the beginning. The shattered window stayed on my mind all night. Monica and I sat on the couch after I cleaned up the glass. Neither of us slept much. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random act. The next morning, while I was drinking coffee, it hit me. Jessica. She'd been radio silent for weeks until the tuition bill came due. She was desperate, pissed off, and entitled enough to do something stupid like this. "Monica," I said, setting the mug down. "I think Jessica did it." Her eyes narrowed. "You really think your sister broke the window? Who else would? She's mad because I cut her off. I wouldn't put it past her to try and send a message." Monica shook her head in disbelief. "Wow, that's a whole new level of low. I need to go talk to my parents," I said, rubbing my temples. "Good. Let's sort this out once and for all," Monica said, grabbing her coat. There was a fire in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. We drove over to my parents' house in silence. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I had a knot in my stomach the entire way there. When we arrived, my mom answered the door, surprised to see us. My dad was in the living room watching TV, and Jessica wasn't there. Good. I didn't want to see her right now. "Jack, what's going on?" my mom asked, frowning. "We need to talk," I said as I stepped inside. "About last night. Someone broke our window." "What?" my mom gasped. "Don't play dumb," Monica said sharply, stepping forward. "We know it was Jessica. They both froze. My dad slowly stood up from the couch, his face tightening. You really think your sister would do something like that? Yeah, I do, I said. After everything that's happened, it makes perfect sense. My mom started shaking her head. Jack, that's a serious accusation. Jessica's been stressed. But she wouldn't. Oh, cut the crap. Monica snapped. Her voice was cold and sharp enough to cut glass. She's been spoiled her whole life and you've let her walk all over Jack. You think she wouldn't lash out because she didn't get what she wanted? Monica, calm down, I said quietly, but she wasn't having it. No, I'm not calming down, she shouted, turning to glare at my parents. You people have no idea how much Jack sacrificed for you. He gave up his time, his money, everything. And what did you do in return? You insulted him behind his back and treated him like an ATM. And now, after all that, you want to act like Jessica isn't capable of this. Monica, please, my dad started, but Monica wasn't finished. She stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a plate from the counter, and hurled it to the floor. It shattered into pieces. You started this war, she yelled. If you hadn't treated Jack like garbage, none of this would have happened. My parents stared in stunned silence. My mom was frozen in shock and my dad just stood there speechless. I walked over to Monica and gently put my hands on her shoulders. Hey, I whispered. It's okay. Let's handle this the right way. She was shaking with anger, but she finally nodded. I turned back to my parents, my voice cold and steady. Jessica confessed to me. I'm calling the police. The color drained from their faces at the word police. No, Jack, my dad said quickly, holding up his hands. Let's not go that far. We'll take care of it. We'll pay for the window, all right? Just don't do anything drastic. I crossed my arms. You expect me to trust you now after everything? Monica wasn't done yet. And let me make one thing clear, she said, stepping forward again. If you ever come near Jack again, or try to pull any more stunts, I'll make sure every cent of his trust fund is protected from you. In fact, I'll help him invest it in something worthwhile. Like anything other than this ungrateful family. They both looked like they'd been hit by a truck. I sighed and shook my head. We're done. I'm done. Monica and I are going home. Don't contact me again. We turned and walked out. Monica was still fuming as we got into the car. I drove silently for a while, the tension slowly easing out of my body. Finally, I glanced at her and chuckled softly. You really went all in back there, huh? She raised an eyebrow. They deserved it. But yeah, maybe I went a little overboard with the plate. We both burst out laughing. Felt good. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my shoulders lifted just a little. 2 days later, my parents wired money to cover the repairs and the new window. No apology, no further contact. It was like they'd finally accepted that I wasn't going to be their cash cow anymore. And honestly, that was worth every dollar I'd spent on Jessica's education. Monica wanted to rally some of her friends to help me recover the money, but I shook my head. It's fine, I told her. I see it as the price I paid to never have to deal with them again. She sighed but eventually smiled. All right, but if they ever try to come back, they're getting nothing from us. Ever. Deal? I said, pulling her close. And just like that, the nightmare was finally over. A few weeks passed without a word from my family. No phone calls, no surprise visits, nothing. It was quiet for the first time in years. Peaceful, almost. I finally began to believe that I was free of them. But of course, it didn't last. One day my Aunt Rachel called. Her voice was calm but had that undertone that told me something was coming. Hey Jack, she said. Can I come over? I need to talk to you about something. When she showed up that night, I knew it was serious. Rachel didn't make small talk. She sat down and got right to the point. Your parents cut me off, she said, crossing her arms as if daring me to be surprised. I blinked. Cut you off? What does that even mean? They don't speak to me anymore. They think I betrayed them because I told you the truth about what they said. I felt a flash of anger. That's ridiculous. You were just being honest. You did the right thing. Yeah, well, in their eyes, honesty is a crime, she replied with a bitter smile. They said I betrayed their trust, called me disloyal. I shook my head and paced the room. Unbelievable. So now they're punishing you because they don't want to face the consequences of their own behavior. Pretty much, she said. Then she leaned forward and locked eyes with me. But listen to me, Jack. I don't care that they're angry. I did what I did because you deserve to know the truth. I've watched them take advantage of you for years, and I couldn't stand by and let it happen anymore. I don't regret it for a second. I sat down across from her and let her words sink in. I wasn't sure what to say. You know what the best part is? She added with a grin. I got to see Monica in action. That woman is fierce, Jack. She's just what you need. I laughed a little. Yeah, she's been amazing through all of this. Honestly, I don't know how I got so lucky. Hang in there, Rachel said. You've got a good one. After Rachel left, I thought about everything she'd said. My parents had really burned every bridge with me, and now with Rachel. It was both sad and liberating. Life went on from there. I kept busy with work, and Monica and I continued to move forward together. Things finally felt stable, until one morning when Monica woke me up looking nervous but excited. She was holding something behind her back. I have to tell you something, she said quietly. I sat up and rubbed the sleep out of my eyes. Okay, what's going on? She pulled a small object from behind her back and handed it to me. Pregnancy test. Positive. I just stared at it for a second, not quite processing what I was seeing. I'm pregnant, she whispered. The words hit me like lightning. I felt my chest tighten, but not with fear. It was shock, disbelief, and pure joy all at once. Slowly, a grin spread across my face. Are you serious? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her eyes sparkling. Yes, we're having a baby, Jack. I pulled her into my arms, laughing. We sat there for what seemed like hours, caught in the moment. The months that followed were a whirlwind. We didn't want a big, fancy wedding. Neither of us cared about the spotlight. So one afternoon we went to the courthouse, just the two of us. No drama, no guests, just us. It was perfect. But that wasn't the last twist. About a month after the wedding, my father called. It was the first time I'd heard from him since the confrontation. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Jack, he said after a long pause, I wanted you to know. We paid for the repairs. The window. It's done. There was no apology, no attempt to repair the relationship, just the statement. Okay, I replied coldly. Thank you. Another pause. I could hear him breathing, as if he was struggling to find the words. But in the end, he didn't say anything else. He hung up, and that was the last time I heard from either of my parents. Monica wanted to fight harder for me to get Jessica's tuition money back. She even suggested getting friends who knew lawyers to look into options, but I stopped her. Mon, I said gently, it's not worth it. That money. That's the price I paid to never have to deal with them again. And honestly, I'm okay with that. She sighed reluctantly, agreeing. All right, but if they ever come back. They won't, I said firmly. And I was right. They never did. Monica and I built a life together. We didn't need anything from anybody. Our baby was born healthy and perfect, and every time I looked at her, I knew I'd finally broken the cycle. I wasn't the family ATM anymore. I was building something real. And for once, everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.